Bam, 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 bam.
We
It
have a new.
is.
Oh,
You
go ahead.
have
Sorry.
me a Bigfoot. Bam, 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 bam. And we just got canceled because I used finger guns.
Yeah, you can't do
As
that.
we know, those are the deadliest
Well,
of the guns.
Joseph R. Biden, Joseph Robinette Biden is his real middle name. As if like it couldn't get any
Is that
worse,
true?
right? It is. It's his middle name, which I like. I don't know. It sounds like so like Robin itself is a girl's name, right? I know that like Robin from
Wow.
Batman is named Robin or whatever, but still, you know, like Robin. I've never heard of a man whose name was Robin. If it's Rob, it's Robert.
Mm.
You never hear like somebody who's like, yeah, I go by Rob, and you're like, well, what is it? What's that short for? You know, it's Robert, right? It's never been Robin, right? But then, so like Robin itself
What's that
is,
short for? Jeff.
yeah, it's short for Thomas, right? Like they pick like the furthest thing from it. But like, so Robin in itself is a feminine name. But then, you know, like when you
Yes.
add et at the end of anything, you know, it feminizes it further or
Yeah, it's
feminizes it,
literally
right?
yeah.
So
It's
his name
literally
is a
adding it.
girl's name with a feminine and suffix, right? So like
Yes.
his parents, I don't know, his parents must have been as stupid as he is, right? Like, you know, we want to pick
First
on,
degenerate, you know?
yeah, that too. I mean, he didn't like rape his daughter because he had a good upbringing, right? He didn't rape Joe Biden didn't rape his daughter in the shower because he
No,
had
but
a
I
good
can tell you.
upbringing.
Yeah, no, that's true. But since we are about truthiness here at the show,
Yeah.
uh, the real reason he raped his daughter in the shower was because his middle name was Robinette.
You know what? I never connected those dots, but now I'm
hmm
I'm starting to
Yeah.
see.
Hand, they put his hand on the Satanic Bible or whatever they do over there, and he said, "Yep, it's true. I touched my gob dang it," or whatever, sort of like, you stupid statement. He'd go, "I'm serious. Come on, man.
Oh,
Come
seriously,
on,
folks.
man.
Seriously, I mean it. I mean it.
Seriously. I'm telling you right now. When I was with my daughter in the shower, I was thinking, come on, Robinette, you could do this.
You can fuck your daughter, Robinette. You can do it. I'm
Come
serious.
on,
I'm
Robinette.
serious. I know you think I'm joking, but I'm serious. Corn Pop, I'll tell you what.
I'll
Corn
tell you
Pop
what.
took me over. Makes me wonder if like Corn Pop is the Mr. Hyde of Joe Biden. You know what I mean? Like, you know,
Ooh,
he
I
like kind
see.
of distanced himself from Corn Pop,
Yeah,
from Corn Pop, and
I
refers to
see.
it as like an alternate, like a different person. But in reality, like maybe, you know, Dr. Jekyll did the same thing. He referred to Mr. Hyde as
Sure.
like this alternate character, this other individual, or even like the Tyler. You know, I'm a spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't watched Fight Club, 1999 hit Fight Club.
hmm
It's like the Ed Norton,
Turns out
Tyler
Helena
Durden
Bottom Carter,
situation.
not even there.
Say that again.
I said, turns out Helena Bonham Carter, not actually even there.
Yeah, I hate to spoil it
She
for anybody.
she joined the movie thinking Tim Burton was going to direct, and when he didn't, poof, she was gone.
Remember when that movie came out, and well, some people probably watching weren't even born then, but when that
Possible.
movie came out, people would talk about like, oh man, I wonder if there's going to be a sequel, because it was like everybody's sequel hungry all the time for a
Oh
sequel.
yeah.
I want more of this, right? As if like
hmm
there's not other Chuck Palahniuk books that become movies or whatever.
Right.
But or David Fitchner, right? Whoever created,
Sure.
like just find something from the same people and watch that instead of like begging
Yeah.
for a sequel to a movie that doesn't necessarily need a sequel. And
hmm
people would ask about Fight Club, a sequel, and I said, you know what? I have heard this. This is before internet was very like there was no Google back then, right? So you
Right.
couldn't just fact check people. So if somebody said something, you know, I read in a magazine, I read in the Rolling Stone because nobody read Rolling Stone back then. You know, only
Yeah,
a
yeah.
select few people had subscriptions to Rolling Stone or had a barber who subscribed to it or whatever, or a doctor or a dentist or whatever.
I
They
was
didn't.
still reading highlights in my
Well, yeah.
late
This
teens
was
and 20s at the
no,
barber shop.
stop it. I was gonna say 1999. You would have been like working on your dissertation for your second PhD, right? Like that would have been you would have been that old.
I owned my third home by then.
Um, but somebody had asked about a Fight Club sequel, and I said, you know what? They actually are. You know how this one started with Fight Club, and it became Project Mayhem. In the sequel, it
Ooh.
starts with Project Mayhem, and it moves on to an even. It goes back to the Fight Club, right? It's everything comes full circle, right? You he
Yeah.
ends up beating the shit out of Morbius again, and then as he's getting hit or whatever, he's like, it's Morbin time, and then he jumps up and fights him. That's how that all That's what I said.
And you
back
said
in
that in
1999. Yeah,
1999.
I
which,
foresaw all this hilarious stuff happening.
That's
Um,
crazy.
yeah, no, and Jin said in the text or in the chat, when did Fight Club come out? 97, 98, or am I thinking of American History X? That was a big time for Ed Norton because it was around the same time, 99,
That's true.
98, that time frame. It was Fight Club and American History X, both huge movies for Ed Norton, who otherwise, like, you didn't know who Ed Norton was back then. I mean, like, I think he was in some movie.
I mean,
he was like
Primal
a priest
Fear,
or something.
or no, what was it called?
Yeah, it was that Tom Clancy book that he was in the movie or whatever. But
Well, he was the, murderer, and he
did
played
you just
himself
ruin
the
Primal
victim
Fear?
from 1989 or whatever it was.
You need to say a
Yeah,
spoiler
19.
alert.
Well, here, I gotta say here, Tom. I mean, I'm agreeing with you, but I want to really lay out how wrong you may yet be, because 96 he busted out with Primal Fear, and I think he may have gotten at least nominated for an Academy Award right out the gate, right? Then he did some stupid movie, says everyone says I love you, no one knows. But then immediately, this is all in 96, by the way. People versus Larry Flint.
Oh yeah, he was in that
Then
movie,
he-
wasn't he?
Yeah. Then he takes a
I
year.
would assume since you're reading his.
It's literally on IMDb. Yeah. So then 2 years later, in the same year, he does American History X and Rounders, and then 99 he does Fight Club.
Right. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that was a big time for Ed Norton.
Yeah.
Was
I mean, the
Everybody Says
biggest
I Love
time
You,
came in 2002 for Death Smoochie. But
what about? Let's talk The Incredible Hulk.
sure.
Ed Norton.
Okay.
he really came into his own with that film, I think.
He brought it up a notch. 2008. It took him 10 years finally. 12 years. Well, from Primal Fear down to Incredible Hulk. That's a long time.
He was the first. Wait, when did that movie come out? Incredible Hulk. You said 2008. So he was the second
correct.
Avenger, right? He was the second Avenger.
Yes, because it was Iron Man,
Yeah,
and then
Iron Man.
that's right.
Which there's nothing more frustrating than that to me. So I'm petty like that. Like if Batman, right? Batman Begins. We had Tom Cruise's wife, Katie Holmes, as Rachel.
Oh yeah.
And then they swapped her out because of Scientology. Scientology said no, thank you
Awful.
to her doing Dark Knight for whatever reason, I don't know. But swapped her out for Maggie Gyllenhaal, which was like a huge downgrade, right? And and then they had the hot girl in the third one who ended up, spoiler alert, in case you haven't watched Dark Knight Rises, they had the hot girl who was like Bane's handler.
That's right.
So
yeah.
kind of like saved
The French girl.
franchise in that way.
Well, what they did is they doubled down because they had Anne Hathaway half the movie in a leather suit, a leather bodysuit, and then the other woman was, of course, hotter than Miss Gyllenhaal there.
Yeah,
I have to admit, I don't want to listen. We here at You Had Me at Bigfoot are not objectifying. We are merely stating facts to us or whatever.
So opinions.
But yeah. No, facts to us. It's just, So here, Tom, I'm not out here saying that big time depraved sexy movies should be coming out. But what I am saying is that when they do, for the love of the game, how about that? Can you just actually choose someone attractive? For example, I'm going back to, this is the Maggie Gyllenhaal thing I've never understood. Yes, the Batman thing was like egregious. It's like, her face was more fucked up than Heath Ledger's, and we're supposed to believe he was the Joker. You know what I'm saying?
All along, Maggie Gyllenhaal was the Joker.
Yeah, she blew herself up. It wasn't. Yeah. But dude, do you remember that movie Secretary she did?
No.
Okay. So, James Spader, okay, and Maggie Gyllenhaal. He hires her as his secretary, but it turns into it turns into a sexually charged, I don't know what you would call it. It's not like power dynamic sexual, like it's not BDSM where like outright, But he would make her, for example, get on her hands and knees and crawl to him with the paper he wanted in his mouth,
Oh
in her
yeah.
mouth, and
So it's just degrading.
yeah, but it was like this power thing back and forth. It eventually equal. I don't know what. But the point I'm making is Maggie Gyllenhaal. I mean, first of all, you already have like 50-year-old James Spader at that point. Okay, fine. You're playing the boss. All right, and it's also an indie flick, but you couldn't find any actress more attractive than her who'd be willing to be a skank for an hour and a half or whatever. However, sorry, I don't know if I'm not respecting people's lifestyles. Is that what it is, Tom? We're supposed to respect people's lifestyle.
You don't. Are you slut shaming Maggie Gyllenhaal?
I think, yeah, the character that Maggie Gyllenhaal played, I may be slut shaming. I mean, I'm making the statement that James Spader was already like, dusty and a little crusty by then. I'm not sitting here being like, oh, you had buff, whatever. I'm admitting it's kind of a lower casting. It had an indie film. I get it. But
Well,
there's no way, no one.
From what I understand is like these actors, they will do the big nut studio film, and then they get brought on to some indie flick and they feel like it's an act of charity maybe, or like a chance to just kind of like spread out. Like there are some roles where she's kind of typecast or whatever in certain roles, I suppose, and probably in Hollywood. And then you go do the indie film, and it doesn't matter if you're not good at whatever. Kind of like Jim Carrey did when he went and did the number 23 or Eternal Sunshine or whatever. He was still kind of Jim Carrey in that movie anyways, but like the number 23, he was trying to get into horror or like,
dude, number 23 was horrible. Yeah,
and
he was terribly
so
miscast
it didn't
for
matter
that.
because it was, it wasn't like a big studio film. It wasn't something that people were like, oh really, he signed on for such and such director. It's like some director that nobody knows or whatever. So they'll do those to kind of maybe branch out a little bit, but they always have that cushion of like, I'll do this big studio film where I'm typecast as whatever, as the ugly, pretty girl, right, who's willing to crawl on her hands and knees to, or whatever. Or I'm like Bruce Wayne's kind of like on again, off again girlfriend who's fucking the lawyer. Like I'm a star fucker, right? I'll fuck the rich guy.
Okay.
Or maybe I'll go and I'll fuck the rich guy, right? Like it's always.
Oh, Tom.
She's always
I'm so glad you brought that up. I don't know. Can you tell, given what I've just described to you about the movie Secretary, and maybe the people who've seen both movies can also add to this in the chat, but which is more egregious? Okay. Maggie Gyllenhaal as the young sex pot secretary in a sort of shame sex power dynamic movie with her boss or whatever, that, or forget that Katie Holmes followed. She followed Katie Holmes. Just forget that. Who cares? Put Katie Holmes over here for a second,
right.
Like Tom Cruise did. Put her in the closet.
Put her aside once she bears your child.
Yeah, she doesn't exist. Now, which is more egregious? That, or that she was the love interest, the pining, the obsession almost of fucking Batman, played by Christian Bale. Yeah. And simultaneously the girlfriend of Aaron Eckhart, who's he doesn't have tons of slam out movies, but he's no slouch in the physical domain. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I'm also saying it's not I don't know, pick an ugly motherfucker. If she was some, kind of, slouchy, maybe had a little bit of a hunch. Yeah, a little bit like Paul Giamatti. Yeah, if she was Paul Giamatti's,
I would believe that.
Right.
So here's what I'm hearing from you, Jerry. We are expected already to suspend belief to some degree.
Because it's Batman. Yeah.
That Batman, right? Period. I don't even have to finish that. We have to suspend belief already that Batman, right?
Right.
Now you're also asking me to further suspend belief that Maggie Gyllenhaal is the love interest and the obsession of two rich guys with a lot of power in the city of Gotham.
Yes.
I don't.
And they both look like them, because if they're both,
because they're both handsome guys. It's not like a rich.
People could be rich
guy.
and fugly. Exactly.
Yeah. No,
that's the other part.
I agree. You know what pisses me off? Something fierce, Jerry, is when they just cast ugly people period. Like I think so. So
What if
here's
it
the
calls
thing.
for it?
Well, if it's supposed to be an ugly person, you're not supposed to be interested in or whatever. And they're not like front and center, the main character. I think if it's the main character, it has to be a objectively good-looking person, because nobody wants to watch a movie and see somebody ugly. I can do that by just going to the grocery store. I can see a bunch of ugly people if I want.
I can do that by looking in the mirror. Thank you very much.
Jerry, stop it.
Hey.
You're no Aaron Eckhart, but however, I will say that you're an objectively handsome man.
I am the Maggie Gyllenhaal of this show.
Well, I guess that would make me the Jake Gyllenhaal. I'll be the Heath Ledger in Joker makeup.
There you go.
Of the show. Who I don't actually think Heath Ledger was particularly handsome, but he like did his thing. He had some other stuff going on. He was like charming, which was enough for me.
Yeah.
So, which was enough for me to really enjoy him in films like Brokeback Mountain, right? But which I didn't have a hard time with that one. Not that I actually ever.
You had more of a soft time, Tom.
Not that I had have a hard time with that one, because I'm like, well, it's two gay guys, like in the closet gay guys, from what I understand, because they have to go to the woods to have sex with each other. But I do have a hard time believing. Then again, I do understand that there are a lot of handsome gay guys. So I will say, and I would say it's probably like 50-50. I would guess.
I would assume. I mean, like the rest of society, right? I mean.
Yeah, I mean, you have to realize that like half the people are going to be appeal to you, and half the people aren't. So. But I will say, Jake
and then
Gyllenhaal,
in the case of some of the videos we watch, half of them are also children. Whatever, dude. Come on.
We watch, Jerry. don't group.
Dude,
me.
On YouTube, the Predator. Yeah. I'm sorry. I should have. Excuse me. I should have clarified.
Because I'm like, I don't watch child porn. I have to put my foot down on that one. We say some pretty fucked up things about ourselves, but
no. Excuse me. To absolutely be clear, double clear, I'm talking about the litany of Predator catcher shows that we watch.
Got it.
Happen to catch a large percentage of gay dudes trying to fuck young boys. That's all. They do
go after. But even those guys, right? Like the guys who are going after kids, right? Boys or whatever.
They're like they don't. They're like,
guys,
you don't look like Jake Gyllenhaal, do you?
Yeah, they're not like guys that you would be like, oh, that's a handsome gay guy, right? It's not like you can say that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, how do these people expect to pull ass when they look like the way they do? How often do we see a handsome predator, right? It's so seldom that you see a handsome predator on any of those shows, right? They're always like guys that you see and you're like, oh, that's an ugly guy. Like, of course,
you're like, oh, that is a predator,
kid, right? But no, there's this show, right? The Mist. It's that. They keep trying to remake The Mist, and here's my opinion on that. Like the movie The Mist by Frank Darabont,
right?
Great director, but he was directing a Stephen King book into a movie, and this time it was a miss. It was a wide miss, right? Okay. And people were like, well, why did this movie suck so bad, right? And you're like, okay, well, whatever. Maybe it was just a miss. Maybe there's just nothing they could. Maybe it was just a bad match for the two of them. Maybe he wasn't really like good for horror. I don't know. But then they make the TV show The Mist, which is also garbage because like it was a miss. Like nobody. Was
I believe you. I didn't see it.
I like it. But I also recognize that it is an incredibly shitty show, and it did not get renewed for a second season. No surprise there. It was a Netflix original or whatever. But Resident Evil, which was also terrible, but I watched
just shit cans.
It didn't make the second season. So when I thought about that, I'm like, okay, now I'll watch that movie and that show or whatever because I'm like, I just like horror stuff, so I'll watch it. And it has the ending was so cool. I wish the rest of the show was as well put together as the ending of that show was because it was amazing. It blew my mind. And I encourage if you take anything from this, I recommend watching the show The Mist on Netflix, if for no other reason than just to check the ending because the ending will it's just really cool. The rest of it is not so much. I mean, it's got some stuff in it that's kind of cool or whatever, but whatever. Overall, it was a miss. And it was like shooting from half court and fucking just coming way short of the basket, right? And you're just like, what? What a mess. But
it's like that point where you're doing it to win $1 million at a game, right? And then, you miss. and you not only miss, but it's so far away
You can't even like be excited.
that
You
the
can't even be
crowd
like,
turns
oh!
on the person. You know what I mean? Like, forget your
Right.
internal world. The crowd just is like booing. They're
Yeah.
like, my fucking kid could have gotten me $1,000,000, you piece of,
Right.
like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it was
yeah.
so bad. Yeah, I
That's what
see.
happens
Okay.
with that show. Like, but still, you're like, you watch it and you're like, well, it was at least worth watching because we had a good laugh or whatever.
Okay.
But the chick that they cast, everybody in that show
Mm-hmm.
was ugly, right? Every
Oh no.
single, except for the heroin addict chick or whatever who has to detox at one point in the show, but she's like pretty okay looking despite being incredibly trashy.
Hmm.
But everybody
Well.
else in that show is hideous, and like even the main chick. I mean, the main chick is like a girl or whatever, the teenager or whatever. So don't even think about
Ugh.
her.
I hate when
Yeah,
chick
right. I
girls.
hate teenage girls. That's how you know we're not. Then all of a sudden, I get CC unit coming in the door, calling me a piece of shit scumbag. But no, like the mom on that show is so ugly, so
Ooh.
incredibly ugly, and I look at her and I'm like, how did she get any role in anything? Because she's just so hideous, and like I can't. And she actually like went on to be in other movies or whatever. From what I understand. But then there's another
Well,
girl who kind of
that
looks
time
like
on the
her too.
couch.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's how a lot of them start, unfortunately. Um, but there's this other chick too who was in
Oh,
Crawl, right? She was in the. Are you looking her up right now?
I'm looking. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I think
pretty awful.
blonde
Um,
lady.
yeah, I think she's blonde. I don't know. She's like kind of like she's got like freckles, like a bunch of freckles. And stuff. She's
Oh
very
no.
like
Okay,
off-putting.
I see now. I see. Yeah,
But there's another
I
chick
got you.
too. She was in the movie Crawl, and then she went on to be in this movie Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon
That
City.
movie was shit too, wasn't it? Crawl.
I actually like Crawl because it's goofy and it's different. But they cast an
Well, I
ugly
guess that's
girl,
what I mean.
right?
Yeah,
And it's
good.
Barry
Yeah.
Pepper, and I like Barry Pepper. I think he's a good actor. I think he's like a fun guy to. He's like a fun actor, and he like picks his roles to like do fun stuff and not shit that like he doesn't do stuff like Ray Liotta just for money. It seems like he kind of is picky with his roles. But anyways, yeah, they cast this ugly girl in that movie too as the main chick, and it's so off-putting. It's so frustrating. And then I was like, when I saw Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City, I was like, who is this ugly bitch again? Like, where have I seen her before, right? And I had to go down the rabbit hole and try to figure out where I had seen her. And like, she's not in movies that I've seen, but then I happened to see Crawl, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's where I saw her. And she really reminds me of the main chick from that other movie. But whatever the fuck, what was I talking about? Or the show, The Mist. And
Yeah.
but then I think about people like Toni Collette, right? Is that her name?
Yeah,
You know who I'm
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about?
But you
She's
know what
like,
the difference is, dude?
yeah.
She can act.
Okay,
That's
so
the thing.
yeah, so here's the thing, right? Like I think of her in the movie Hereditary, and she kind of like was
Yeah.
she was like the star of that movie, right?
Oh yeah.
And she bow die in the chat. Is this about Bigfoot? No, it kind of feels like it the way we're describing some of these women. But she is she's not pretty, right? But she's never like supposed to have been pretty. I don't think in any of her films, anything that I've ever seen her in, she's never been like the pretty girl. But she can act, and she really did put on a show in that movie Hereditary.
She is the Philip Seymour Hoffman of female of the female actor world, I think, because she had a lot of roles. She starred in her own show on HBO for a while, the United States of Terror, whatever. She always had roles where you were like, oh, like say she was the mom in Sixth Sense.
Oh, that's right.
She was the mom in Hereditary or whatever. Well, the daughter / whatever. You understand? She was in Hereditary.
You know what? I'll tell you what, Jerry. I take my statement back. When I was, I don't know, maybe my mommy fetish started back then, but the Sixth Sense, and that was also 99 or 96. I don't know. It was an old movie, but when I saw that in the theaters, I remember feeling some type of way, as they say now, about the mom in that movie, Toni Collette, right, in Sixth Sense, when she's in the car, and I still get like a little now when I watch it like as a dad, like I get a little choked up, right, and having lost my dad, I get a little choked up when she's in the car and the kid says, he's talking about, hey, you know, grandma's here or whatever, she's standing at your window, and she said to answer your question that you ask her, her answer is every day. And then she's like, she starts tearing up or whatever, and she like can't choke out what she's
Right.
trying to. And the kid's like, "What's your question, Mom? What do you ask her all the time?" She's like, "Do I make you proud?" And then the answer, of course, is every day. And you know, like she really like puts on this show, right? She's able to like cry and convincingly cry.
Yeah, she's
To
great.
that.
Yeah.
So like when I see her in Hereditary, and I see how well she really reminds me of my own mom, right? Because in that situation, this is not an Oedipus
Okay,
thing,
wait.
right? She reminds me the way that she acts in Hereditary. She like the way she like really like comes out of her shell, or like really comes like she rages at the kid at the dinner table or whatever. Like that really reminds me of my mom growing up. How she would like like if you pissed my mom off, she wouldn't pull any punches. She would let you have it, and it really reminds me of that. So like when she did that, I was like, that is a better performance from her in that situation than I have seen in many award-winning performances, right? But because it's a horror movie, they never get.
She did get some accolades for it, by the way. I don't know if she, like, I don't know that there's an actual, you know, say Oscars category for it or whatever, but I do believe, you know, the movie itself won all kinds of. It was kind of deemed as like, and I know you're probably going to take some offense that people would kind of describe horror as like the junk pile of you know of movies or whatever.
You're right.
But essentially, the talk was, and I would have to agree without trying to be as insulting, but it was like, holy shit, yeah, this was horror or whatever, but this is a legitimate sort of psychological break thriller sort of, like it was in other words, they were basically saying because of her acting and the good directing and all that stuff, they were like, yeah, this is actually just a really good movie. It doesn't matter that, you know, there's a horror element to it and all that. Like this is believable in a good quality film. And, you know, they placed a lot of that in the back of her performance.
Yeah. And I would agree. No, so just for the record, Bodai, no, we're not talking about Bigfoot today. We start next week back into our paranormal thing. We're not doing it right now. This is our last episode of Tom and Jerry's Goofabouts, the series, before we go back into the paranormal stuff. So please do go, if there's another actual paranormal Bigfoot episode or show that's going live right now, I encourage you to go check that out. But do come back and see us later. So Acid Draposi, God bless him, he said the good Bigfoot stuff is at the very end, always thought provoking. So we're like he's clickbaiting for us, so I appreciate that. We buried the lead. But yeah, no, we will see you later. Do tune in starting next week again if you're here for the paranormal content. But no, yeah, I really like that movie. I think that's one of my kids always ask me, they're like, what's your favorite horror? They're like, Scream. They're very like Ghostface. What's your favorite scary movie? Because that's all I watch is horror movies. And I'm always like, well, my favorite, I think the scariest horror movie I've seen in a long time is Hereditary. Because it's, I actually had a nightmare about this last night, and I'm not supposed to have nightmares because I have those pills. But I had a nightmare about the grandma on that show, right? That movie, who you don't really even see, but in the pictures. And it was funny. It's weird that we would get onto this conversation after having just had a nightmare about it. Because the whole movie is about this demonic entity called Paimon, who is really one of the I don't know if I think he's the king, one of the kings of hell in this pseudo monarchia daemonum, or the lesser key of Solomon and all that stuff. He is a legitimate demon that people summon for stuff, right? They do call upon him, and he does have his legions, and perhaps it is the legions that respond or whatever. But Paimon is a demon. I've said it enough times. He's probably like, huh? You know, like he's listening now. But yeah, he's definitely one. He's a real demonic entity who they use in that movie, and they almost make it seem like he's like a fictional character, but he's a real entity that people, if you were to ask any kind of demon summoning wizard who Paimon is, they would tell you. They'd be like, well, he's the demon who is like, he provides, and forgive me, I don't exactly remember what it is that he provides. He shows up, he as like riding on a he shows up riding on a camel, a dromedary, I don't remember how it's pronounced, but essentially a one-humped camel, and that's how he appears when he is summoned. And I think, and most of the demons, honestly, they just provide you with information of like, it could be the future or the past. You can ask them about events that have happened or will happen. You can ask them about secrets, unknown secrets, stuff, which I guess is the definition of secrets. So I repeat myself redundantly. And that in itself was repeated redundantly. But they will also tell you, like, they can tell you, just like, if you have questions, you can consult, okay, which demon is going to be the best one for me to, like, find out what I need to know. Like, if you want to know secrets about, I don't know, medicine or whatever, you would call upon this demon. Or if you wanted to know about secrets about wealth, you would call upon this demon. Or secrets about something like so that's who you would summon. I don't remember specifically what it is that he provides, but probably wealth based on the topic of the movie or the concept of the movie. But so he's a real being, right? And it's kind of like, it's obscure enough to where anybody who has never kind of studied the occult would think, okay, this King Paimon is probably some imaginary fictional character that they created for the show or for the movie, just like no different than like I don't know, Harry Potter, right? You know, it's a fictional character that they've built this lore around or whatever. And there's enough that they did the study to know what the sigil looks like, or that they've come up with, they've done like this world building where they've created a sigil. They know what this demon does, and they know kind of like what he's into and what he would react like and what he wants and how he would appear. And like they did this world building around this fictional character. But in reality, Paimon is, all they did was they researched a couple books. Because if you look at the Lesser Key of Solomon and the Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, or a couple other books that talk about specifically the hierarchy of demons, they will tell you that Paimon is a real guy, and this is like his sigil. This is how you summon him. This is what you need to give to him in order for him to give you information. Which it's so funny, this whole thing with Dave. Anytime Dave tells me anything, my demon summoning wizard friend, anytime he brings me any information, I'm always like, where did you get this information? Because I'm like, I don't want to hear information that he got from demons, right? Because that would be, I feel like that would be something that I'm not allowed to know. And so if we're talking about something, and I realize that it's kind of getting into like a weird place where I'm like, all this seems like really involved, and I know Dave's a really smart guy and he probably comes up with a lot of this shit by himself. However, there are times where I'm like, this seems like something probably he got from a demon or something that he was like, which has happened before. He's told me stuff that he's received from demons, and that's the problem too with getting information from demons, is you don't know what's true and what's not. But then the stuff that he tells me, because they're notorious for lying, and so, but sometimes the stuff he says, I'm like, well, I mean, all this stuff sounds legit, and I mean, like, he does his homework and he makes sure that the shit is like legit based on the science that we know, or the stuff that we know. And so I'm like, this is stuff that I think is true that he got from a demon. I'm not allowed to know this, right? So I'll tell him to stop at a certain point. I'm like, I can't know anymore. I was like, I appreciate you telling me all this, and it's very fascinating. However, and most of the time it doesn't even apply to me. It's not stuff I'm looking to do anyways. But he'll tell me all this fascinating shit, and I'm like, that sounds like something I'm not allowed to know, so we need to stop talking about this. And he's very respectful about it. He's like, okay, I get it. Yeah. And that's the end of the conversation. But yeah, this Paimon character, he's a real guy. And, or he's formerly an angel. Now he's a fallen angel. He's a demon. And he has, like, he's actively involved in corrupting the world and shit. And so this movie, while not based on a true story, is based on a true story, right? Like it's very much like a documentary, in a way that like this sort of thing could absolutely happen. It probably has happened, and maybe not like a head being severed as she's like hanging out the car. Spoiler alert! As she's like hanging out the car because she's having an allergic reaction to peanuts or walnuts or whatever was in the brownies. And but everything that happens after that we find out throughout the course of the film is like that's all stuff that happens, that can happen, and like if you're not careful, it will happen. And I think what's most fascinating about this, and a lot of our anti-Semitic viewers will appreciate this, is the creator of that movie, the writer and director.
You mean the feds?
Yeah, well, no, not this time. It was a Jew.
Oh.
He wrote the film, and then I actually read the screenplay, and the screenplay is so poorly put together it would not pass like if it was presented to an actual studio or somebody like
a high school. Oh,
it was written by somebody who it probably was his first screenplay he ever wrote, but the way it appeared, because I studied how to write. I'm not very good at. I've written one screenplay and like half of another that I was working on for a long time, but then I started with seminary. It got set aside. But so I've written them. I know the fundamentals of like script writing, and this dude didn't meet like any of the basic criteria. And so I mentioned this one time when I was on Skinwalker tapes, and Dogbot, one of the guys that's always on the panel, and I always bicker with him. He had actually I said something about, I was like, well, it was very poorly written by this Jew, and I was like, I don't know how it got funding, and he's like, poorly written script by a Jew, how it got funding? You're really asking these questions? Like, so there's that. But then like this dude, so he's Jewish, right? Practicing Jew in Hollywood, writes a movie that essentially tells you how to summon Paimon. If you watch that movie, you could summon Paimon. If you watch it and you take notes, you can summon him. And so this Jew writes about a demon that was summoned by a Jew, King Solomon, in order to build the temple. And allegedly, right? I'm not. This is extra biblical. Like you can't find it in scripture. It doesn't necessarily say how King Solomon was able to build the temple, but it's said that King Solomon used demons to build the temple, which I think would make sense, because like demons are kind of the whipping boys of the Old Testament for a lot of the stuff that's kind of like
it's just always
They were essentially. If you were to ask me, did demons build the pyramids? I would say probably. I would say there's probably a good chance that they did. They were kind of like the whipping boys of the day, and people would summon them. They would do these things, and even like if you watch Ghost Adventures now, when they were talking about that building where
I don't watch any ghost shows that don't have Jack Osbourne. I'm sorry.
well, no, it's on the same channel, but it's not.
I understand, but listen, Tom, I have
Post
my.
Malone was on it.
Did you know?
Time. I don't know if you know.
Really? Dude, by the way, have you noticed that Jack Osbourne has a UFO show?
No, you told me that with Jay.
No,
Lewis,
I
right?
told you. No, I told you a Bigfoot show.
Oh,
this is a UFO show.
You know what?
Dude,
I hate to say that, it doesn't surprise me, but
dude, can I just say this? Do you feel like our fascination with the paranormal becomes less and less legitimate the more that they just let Jack Osbourne do shit? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, how much are we supposed to it's like, okay, first you let the guy from Blink-182 talk to the feds and try to make me believe there were UFOs. Secondly, you now have Jack Osbourne with Bigfoot, UFO, and ghost shows. You motherfuckers are ruining every single thing that exists. Like, I don't know, man. I think it's a way of, I think, getting believers in this stuff to just go, all right, I can't do it anymore. There's just no way. I'm sorry.
Mostly Wave said something interesting, and I have to tell you, he may have said it in jest. He said he got the Krabby Patty secret formula from a demon. And
oh my goodness.
The trick is, now you can really do that. You have to, like I said, follow the steps that they give in the movie, the documentary Hereditary. And but then when he appears, in order for him to give you the formula, there is something that you have to say to him. You have to say to him, "Ravioli, ravioli, give me the Formuoli," is what you say, and that's how you get the Krabby Patty formula. That's actually amazing,
wow,
Mr. Krabs. That's true. That's also a documentary where
got truth bombs all over this show.
I know. I should have given you a spoiler alert. But let's also see here, Acid Raposi, which, by the way, let me plug Acid Raposi because he's here and he's a friend of mine, and I do love him and I love his music. He has a band called Whiskey Grenade, but he does this song, which is kind of like an internet sensation as far as I'm concerned. I listen to it occasionally just like to refresh my memory because it's a fun song to listen to and it's got a good message. It's called Wood Chipper Go Brrr, right? And it's a song about killing pedophiles. Well, killing pedophiles, period, in Minecraft.
Okay, sure.
And he has a disclaimer that is attached to the song where it talks about how he's talking about killing pedophiles in Minecraft. He has to have a disclaimer at the end of it. But no, if you look up his, if you're still in the chat, Acid Raposi, or Acid Drop OSY, it's not. I always call him Acid Raposi, but I know that's not. I know it's a separate thing. If you're still here, plug your Twitter, because I know it's your pinned tweet. The Wood Chipper Go Burr song. It's really good. And if the studio version is still available, I was one of the lucky ones who was able to hear the studio version, like, when it originally came out, when he finished it, and it sounds great. It's one of my favorite songs, truth be told, and I'm not just sitting here plugging a guest in the chat. I really do enjoy that song.
Okay.
I think it's I think it's a really fun song, and at a certain point he was trying to get like how many people to share and like it or views to a certain number. So if you could go check his Twitter out, and he's got it right there on his Twitter, you can watch it there, or you can find him on YouTube. I follow him on there. I think he's one of the preferred pages on the YouTube. So so it says he's on Twitter and on YouTube as Acid Drop OSY, Acid Raposi. See that in the chat. You can find him on there, and like I said, he's got some he's a professional musician as far as I'm concerned. Like, I listened to his stuff. I remember thinking he did a lot of goofing around, and I would watch his live streams and shit, and he did like a lot of goofing around, but then you like listen to, he's got like real professional music out there. And I don't plug indie musicians often or whatever, but I do enjoy it, especially since the message that's there in that song. I think it's a really cool song. But yeah, let me see. Oh, and Jin right there says, since you bring up Skinwalker tapes, I got introduced to You Had Me at Bigfoot by Tom being on Exodus Americanus, which is another show that I have appeared on. I do enjoy going over and seeing my bud Roscoe and Walrus. Because I did an exorcism for Roscoe.
Fun.
Actually on, I'll fuck it, we'll just plug everybody today. There was an episode on Exodus Americanus where I went on there and I told the story about how we did the exorcism for Roscoe. It was a really fun experience, and we were actually able to talk. We didn't talk about it for like a year and some change or whatever, but finally went over. He invited me to tell that story, and I did, and it was a fun time. But yeah, back to Acid Raposi. He said, so I'm not one to believe in demons, but years ago I started to mock Belial and saying it all the time, and then his life fell apart. So there's this, which is funny because I was in my nightmare that I was telling you about with the grandma from Hereditary. That's exactly what I did. Was I said something about, like, I was trying to get her attention, but she wasn't. I was in a room with her or something. I was sitting kind of like catty corner from her, and there was something between us to where I couldn't get her attention. And I do this thing, and I don't know if you've, like, for instance, this dude that like I went hunting with for falconry, and he was potentially going to be one of my my sponsor. I saw him at the Y, but I wasn't really sure if it was him or not. So what I did was I said, and he's a friend of mine on Twitter, but I couldn't really tell if it was him because it was at the Y and we were at the pool and it was in the bathroom, and I didn't want to be the guy who's like, hey, Tyler, is that you or whatever, and like he's like trying to help his kid get changed or whatever in the stall. It is a weird situation. So, and being a dad, I'm like, I know I don't want people to come up to me and be like, hey, is that you, and like try to talk to me and be some stranger or some shit, especially if it was a stranger. It'd be even weirder. But so what I did was I said, you know what I hate? Star Wars and falconry. Those are two things that I really hate. And then like he turned around and he saw me. I was like, oh, okay, it is you. Okay. And so that's how, because nice. He also likes Star Wars and we talk about it on Facebook all the time and shit. But so I do that in real life. So in my dream, I did kind of the same thing with this grandma. I said, you know who's a big fat fag or whatever? Paimon, right? And I was just saying some hurtful shit about Paimon. And like she lost her shit in my dream, and like it just got really crazy and hectic in my nightmare. I won't go into any detail because people who talk about their dreams are either lying or they're like so boring that they have to like resort to talking about their dreams, which is kind of a stupid thing to talk about. But it just so happens that was in my dream, which is weird because like Paimon, right? You know, I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where I'm like, maybe there are no coincidences. I don't know. But yeah, so like it's so weird that you would say that because that was kind of the theme of that particular nightmare. Acid Raposi.
Oh, weird.
We are like way over on time. Are we ready to do something? Are we doing something today? Are we?
I don't know.
We got about 12. We've kind of turned this episode into you had me at summoning Paimon.
Well, can I ask you real quick? I mean, since we were talking about demons and you mentioned demons potentially building the pyramids, and they're all over the Bible and stuff. I mentioned to you before we started the show that I was bored last night, and I watched Noah on YouTube, free without ads, or free with ads, whatever. And anyway, like I just figured you were plugging stuff, so I don't know, YouTube with ads. I guess I don't know. Come on, you guys, Google really needs your help. And it's
They're
too bad.
asking for a subscription, or like Wikipedia, they're asking for donations. Google is.
Oh, really? That'd be incredible, dude. That'd be so funny, right? Although I will say, they do throw at me like, "Come on, get over to YouTube TV. We'll give you 3 months."
Still, even though I don't have a, I don't have. So I use that. Somebody recommended it to me. I don't know who it is. Whoever it was, I thank you, because like I still use it to this day, even though it was discontinued. My YouTube, I use that YouTube Advanced, and it has no ads, it has no nothing, it cuts all that bullshit out. You still have a dislike button, and you can close your phone and like put your phone in your pocket if you've got earbuds in or whatever, and you can still continue listening or watching whatever you do. So that's how like I was able to power through the entire like Predator Catcher library while I'm just doing other shit. Is I'm able to like I have my hearing aids connected to my phone, so I just like constantly listening to Predator stuff. So yeah, anyways, go ahead, please go ahead.
Well, yeah, so no, it's just I wish that you had seen it, because I'm not as well versed on, like direct from the Bible, right, as some people I believe on this show could be. I don't know, someone who may have some kind of degrees in this sort of thing, or a cloak on order, I think is really the status on that one.
Yeah, it's on order, not until
a cloak on order.
End of January.
Yeah, but like say for example, right? And I know they take artistic licenses with even the Holy Book and all that. I get it,
God could have done a better job. Let me go ahead and fix some of these glaring errors in the scripture.
Well, so for example, did you first, did you know do you know the casting? Russell Crowe plays Noah, which I thought was just
I suppose.
Well, I just thought
are we talking about fat Russell Crowe?
He's not thin. He's not Gladiator, but he's not like Thor Love and Thunder either. You know what I mean? Like he's in that mid stage where he's probably starting to drink again. You know what I mean? Like one of those.
Where he's got his hand on the back of his pants and somebody took a picture of it.
Yeah, exactly. And then Jennifer Connelly plays his wife. Now, let me ask you this. I didn't know. One of his sons first of all, they find a girl wounded while the rest of the people in this whole area had been murdered by scavengers and things.
Are we talking about Noah?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Noah, his wife, and his three...
Let me just stop you there.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
No. All right. So Noah... Dude, check this out. So Noah, his wife, and 3 kids find this young girl who's wounded amongst a bunch of dead bodies on their way to Methuselah to meet his grandfather or his wife's grandfather, who anyway, and she had a wound where like she would be barren because she was like slashed in a part of her body on her torso, right? Then Anthony Hopkins, who plays
Anthony Hopkins is that.
Right, and then he blesses her, and he like blesses her, and she can then have kids again. But I'm like, how is that possible? I don't know. Anyway, and then also there was a king that snuck his way onto the ark, and
let me just stop you right there.
Okay.
No.
All right.
That also didn't happen.
All right, and then he also got he convinced. So one of Ham was pissed off that he didn't have a wife going onto the ark, right? He's like, hey man, I need a wife. It's gonna be, come on, this is come on.
He's the youngest one, right? If I refresh my memory.
No, second one. Oh,
Shem? Is it Shem?
Nope, Shem is the oldest.
He's the oldest.
It's not Jeremiah. It's like something with ends with an H.
He's the bad one too, the youngest one. I don't remember who it is.
See, it's interesting you say that because in this movie, Ham tries to get a girl who's like a fledgling refugee of this like evil king, right? And he ends up needing Noah to help him, and Noah leaves the girl, to die, and Ham hates him for that. And when the evil king sneaks his way onto the ark, he doesn't tell anybody, and they plot to kill Noah as a fuck you for you left my wife, my innocent, that we were supposed to take innocent people on here, whatever. Anyway, and so then he kills the king rather than his own dad. But then once they finally, storm's over and they're on land, he just leaves because he's like, well, I don't belong here anymore. He's like, all right, I kind of sort of forgive you, or maybe we have an understanding, but I'm just going to leave. And that was it. And then the real thing that I wanted to know about, because you had mentioned like Fallen Angels, I think briefly at some point in this conversation. In this movie, they're called the Watchers, and they are fallen angels who are covered completely in rock and stone and stuff. So they're these deformed, monsters. Yeah. And generally they kill humans who, I guess, attack them or whatever.
Well, naturally, yeah. They're very territorial of their survival.
Yeah. Well, it's in the movie they're portrayed as like the aggressors, but then it turns out, well, they attack us all the time or whatever. So, like, it's kind of like
I have a problem with like rocks, right?
Yeah,
they're always there in the way. And
rock angel, whatever monsters, whatever. And so anyway, they catch Noah and his fam, and one of them actually believes Noah. And he's like, oh, I see in you, Adam, He's like, I see, right? And so he rescues the fam from the others, and they actually, here's the deal. I didn't believe this at all, but I was like, wow, what? The Watchers, these the fallen angel, rock demon monster people, helped and were primary. I mean, as far as workload goes, they were a very primary reason why the ark was built. Yeah. They constructed the ark with Noah, and then fought off the human mob that was coming to take on the ark. Yes, get on the ark and stuff like that. And then when they all died, like, because humans overwhelmed them, and eventually God took them back. That was what. Oh, so good. So I was just curious, if anything I just said was and by the way, I want you to know it was from Darren Aronofsky, who I remember at least made Black Swan for reference, and I'm not sure what other movies, but anyway.
So the guy who commissioned the lesbian sex scene between Natalie Portman and Mia.
Oh, he also made Requiem for a Dream, by the way.
Oh, so the one who commissioned a gay sex scene between Jennifer Connelly and some other girl with a double-sided dildo, while like that black guy who's in every movie or whatever watches.
That's right. Yeah.
So the guy who's like always commissioning gay sex scenes between two hot women.
Yeah, but can I say real quick, just as I listen, I hear where you're coming from. And I'm not even sure 100% where I stand. No, for real. I have a weird... How do I put this? His movies are about, like, people who have the demon, have the devil in them. Like, it's awful shit. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, yes, okay, I hear what you are saying. And in order to have his vision, he has on film degenerate, terrible shit, right? But the lesson in those movies is like, here's how far you are away from like human. Like, in other words, it's watching people become less and less human, more and more, sort of sinful, evil, and everything, and then the consequences thereof. Like, Jared Leto lost his arm. Wasn't it the Wayans guy who gets like AIDS or something? Yeah, or you know what I mean? Like the whole, you understand? Or he gets killed, and then the other and the girl gets it. And by the way, Jennifer Connelly was in both movies. So
Well,
she
yeah,
went from.
I bet she was.
She's like,
After
can
he
I
had a
be?
double-sided dildo scene with some other girl to
Yeah, it's
pay
like,
for heroin.
okay, since I did that, could I just be Noah's wife and not have many lines, please?
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
I would
yeah.
love that.
Well, that's how it was back then. Women knew their place, right?
Yeah,
Oh
unless it was
man.
Emma Watson, who would not shut the fuck up in this movie. But
Oh
anyway,
my gosh, yeah, she's awful. She's
she was.
actually, you know what? She's actually probably demon possessed in real life.
Dude,
You know
no,
how I
you
have
see,
that opinion?
yeah. Holy crap. No, I don't know that you have that, but I absolutely understand why you have that.
Yeah.
For real.
So it's not necessarily Emma Watson specifically, but well, I'm sure I saw a picture of her recently, like where she wasn't like fully made up or whatever, and I saw
Oh,
her, and I just got a good look at her, and I was like, that's a woman who's demon possessed. Not just essentially, not just because of how she looks, but because how she rose to power, or rose to power.
oh
So
yeah.
she's the fucking president, right? How
Right.
she rose to stardom, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, but I saw her and I was like, holy shit, she looks terrible. And then I
Yeah.
thought about it and I'm like, you know what? I was like, she kind of came onto the scene real quick and rose quick. And I was like, that's kind of one of my that's one of my red flags. It's not necessarily like a definitive thing where I'm like, okay, this is a person who's demon possessed just because they look a certain way, or I'm sorry,
Mm-hmm.
because they rose quickly. That's not. I have like a checklist of things that you have to hit before I will say that that person is definitively demon possessed, in my opinion. And
Okay.
but which is, as you know, a fact to us. The
Obviously.
but I saw her and I was like, oh, she did kind of come up quick, and she now I'm looking at her, she looks incredibly haggard as like a young, which is also
It's like she's been drained, dude. Like,
yeah, and that's something that typically that's another one of my criteria is if you can look at somebody who's in their mid 20s and they look like they're 80, or
right.
like the other gender, right? Like if they don't look
Yep.
like what they're supposed to look like,
Or in her
based on
case,
their
both,
age,
by the
right?
way.
Yeah, she's very androgynous in this picture that I saw. I was like, man, that is somebody who like I would put on my list of people who I think are demon possessed. And I
Yeah.
don't know.
Oh,
some
don't
of her
forget her UN
behavior-
connections and stuff, dude.
And she was,
real.
and she also got plugged by Harvey Weinstein a couple times too, right?
Oh.
And she was treated like a houseplant by Harvey Weinstein. But she was also in that movie, The End of Days, or no, what was it called? The End of Times, End Time, whatever the fuck it was called. The one where it's like James Franco and all those guys, and they're like,
Oh, yeah. It was the spoof on
This
Apocalypse
is
or
the
whatever.
end.
Yeah.
This is the end.
This is
And
the end.
she
Yes.
was in it, and she was like the hardcore one who was just kind of like running around out in the wild.
She was out there killing shit. She was out there eating people or whatever. I don't even know what.
Like
Yeah.
she was like real quick to turn to like whatever survival beast mode or whatever.
Yeah,
So
she
I'm
was
like,
beast mode. Yeah.
yeah, and this character, like, and that movie in itself is in itself sort of a red flag. Where like standalone, I wouldn't be like, well, James Franco is demon possessed. I don't think that. I think James Franco is just like, he might be. I mean, who knows? But Seth Rogen, people like Seth Rogen, I think Seth Rogen is probably demonically possessed. But these are based off of like certain red flags and certain criteria that I have that I would say that this person is probably the subject of.
Did you know he's going to be in the Fantastic Four now?
Is he? What is he? The Rock, the retarded, the slow
Right.
rock guy.
The Thing, yeah.
Well, he's actually like he's lost a ton of weight, so and he wears like I don't know. I saw him the other day and I was like, this is a guy who's like hit. Everybody has this limit where once they hit it, I'm like, okay, this is the point where they've lost control and the demon has full control, right? And I think he's hit that point. And you know, there was some like River Phoenix when River Phoenix was never super duper popular, but he was famous enough, and he ended up overdosing in the Viper Room, right? And so
right.
I use him as an example because I think that that's one of those situations where like, and then Joaquin Phoenix rode on the coattails or whatever, but I think like certain people at a certain point the demon takes control.
his
Go ahead, correct me.
just his disformed lip
That's what brought him to the top.
can act around, can dance around any old actor. Understand me?
The circles around his dead brother in the Viper Room.
That's right. He does. He can act circles around his dead brother,
dead brother.
mostly because his brother's dead.
Right, because he died after a demon took full control and said, "Hey, listen." So here's you know what? I'll give it to you. So here's my criteria when I look at an actor or a musician or anyone who's famous.
Oh wait, just real quick because I know we're gonna forget.
No, please.
And then have to move on. Well, I'm sorry, but
no, go ahead.
Is anything that I mentioned that sounded wackadoo shit at all? Like, I know you said no and laughed, but we didn't seriously, like, were the fallen at all involved? Anything
Um,
like that? Nothing?
so
Because I was watching this and I was like, all right, this seems a little far-fetched. All I remember was Noah built a fucking ark, 2x2 on the,
right,
on
and the
the old
cubits
animal.
and the gopher wood and all that shit. So the story of Noah spans maybe, gosh, don't quote me, but it's honestly like only a couple chapters. It's
Hmm.
very very short.
Yeah, it's brief.
And so here's my opinion on what you've told me. You've told me that Noah. Okay, so there's all this stuff that happens that's not, it has nothing to do with the Bible whatsoever. It's not written about, spoken about in Scripture at all. Not
Hmm.
a single thing in Scripture really defends anything that what you've said, other than the fact that there's an ark and there's a person named Noah and his wife and his 3 kids.
Oh,
And it's Japheth is somebody actually
yeah, I saw
mentioned
that.
it.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank
Jen.
you for
Um,
that.
but Ham, remind me to talk about Ham in a moment. But nothing in there is backed by Scripture. Now, are there lost scriptures that are not canonical with the Holy Bible, what we
Hmm.
understand, even whether Protestant or Catholic or whatever? Is there stuff out there that was regarded as truth until the council met and said, "Hey, these are the books that we're keeping"? Yeah, there's plenty, and I've not read all of it. I've read quite a bit of it, and I know
Hmm.
there's some stuff. Um, like the Book of Enoch, right? The Book of Enoch was is still used in some traditions, but
Hmm.
and it, I don't know, I don't think it's in the Catholic Bible or in the whatever. Um, but it's there, right? It's a book, and it talks quite a bit about the Nephilim a little bit more. Now the Nephilim, and you'd have to talk to this dude. We have an episode called "You Had Me at Nephilim," and Reinhardt, he's kind of an expert on that, or he is an expert on it. There's no denying it. But he studied it in like all aspects, and my understanding of the Nephilim is strictly biblical, and the Nephilim is mentioned like 2 or 3 times throughout Scripture, and one time is mentioned in Genesis when it says that the Nephilim were the product of the sons of God and the daughters of man, which is in
Oh
some
yeah.
cases referred to. Um, okay, so Jin said Enoch is in the Ethiopian Bible. So, like I said, some traditions still hold it to be Holy
Right.
Scripture. Um,
Dude, that's so weird. Speaking of timing of stuff, like
yeah,
not
yeah,
to,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
He just brought up the Ethiopian Bible. Today I was watching a video about where this guy was kind of being philosophical about the growth of tattoos on people, and how you're not supposed to,
Sure. Destroy the
desecrate the body,
temple. Yeah.
destroy the temple, all that kind of stuff. And he had this personal story where he was working at a warehouse and these Ethiopian migrants, very, of course, very, very religious. Uh, this guy got some tattoo or whatever, and he was trying to show them, and they reacted in revulsion, and they were like, "That's against God. I don't even want to look at that," whatever, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so there, and it's just like you said earlier, like, oh, Hereditary. How is it that we get on this topic? And then well, I had just literally watched a 5-minute, 10-minute video on that,
It's so
partially
weird,
on
right?
that
There's no
exact
such thing as
subject.
coincidences anymore.
Yeah.
Um, I wish I would have changed our titles. I wish I would have known that we were going to turn this into a whole episode. We've actually started this week back to our paranormal conversations. Uh, so I wish I would have known that before we kicked Bo Die out of here. And but no, I think to if we were to sit here and say something is they took artistic whatever turns or whatever. I don't think anything that was said was necessary, with the exception of like the Watchers or whatever they are.
Hmm.
I don't think anything outside of that could it have happened. Sure, a lot of that stuff could have happened because we only have such a brief glimpse at Noah's life. Literally, like, I mean, it took him what 100 years to build the ark, but it doesn't talk about what was going on when he was building the ark. It doesn't talk about what happened really after the ark, with the exception of one thing. Ham, and this is a story that not a lot of people will tell you. If you look at the story in Scripture, it specifically talks about Ham discovering Noah naked and drunk. He's like lying around or whatever, drunk because he got drunk off of wine after the ship after the waters had
Yes.
receded and shit, and
Right.
Ham discovers Noah, and he's naked and he's drunk and whatever, in some despicable act, and then Noah curses Ham, and then his son, or I'm sorry, he doesn't curse Ham, he curses his son Canaan, and which is why Canaan goes on to become black people, right? Just generally. So this is, you'll hear this.
Wait,
like,
what?
Canaan, the son of Ham, went on to become
Oh,
what is
son of
now
Ham.
Africa, right? And
Oh, I see.
black people are cursed based off of Noah's son's Ham, and this despicable act that occurred when he saw Noah lying naked. And if you look at some of the original transcripts, original translations, yeah. So now you're like, okay, he really cursed his grandson, because, and like the people who would descend, because essentially Noah's family became the family that everybody came
Yeah,
from.
that was the right. Yeah.
So you think like, okay, if you were discovered naked and your son laughed about it because you were drunk and you passed out naked, and they, your older kids or your other kids came and covered you, and like they had the youngest one was, of course, had a laugh about it or whatever.
Yeah.
And which is like natural. You'd be like, okay, you got me. I fucked up. I drank way too much, too many fireball shots, right? And I ended up drunk and lying naked on the floor of this ark that I spent 100 years building. You're like, that's a little excessive, right? To curse this family, the descendants of this family, because if you don't know,
Dude.
Noah's sons kind of like spread out, right? So like one went into Europe, one went to Asia, one went to Africa. Ham went to Africa. It's kind of how it spread out. So you can trace your lineage to which son of Noah's, if you do that 23andMe, you can kind of trace your lineage back to which son of Noah you came from, right? And I believe Japheth is the one that we come from, at least my family, because it's European, right? And he was the one who went off into Europe. And so I can trace my lineage back essentially to Japheth, right? Is the father of my people or whatever. And but anyways, you're like, that's a little excessive to curse an entire population over laughing at you because he saw you naked, right? You might think that that's excessive, right?
Right.
Now, there are some people and some traditions, some texts, and some, as you like study it further, that particular event itself, it's not that he had inappropriate thoughts or that he laughed that Noah was naked and drunk or whatever, and then like they covered him up or whatever, and they covered his shame. Like, it seems very innocent, and that's certainly the story that we tell our kids. The true story, allegedly, now I'm strictly speaking from like kind of like an original Hebrew translation of the text. Ham actually raped Noah, and that's why he raped his own father, and that's why his kids ended up being, his descendants became cursed, and then Israel went on to slaughter the Canaanites in the Promised Land, and so on and so forth. So once you realize that, like, a lot of that stuff starts to make sense, because you hear how awful Canaan is, and how awful the people of Canaan are, and how like we're supposed to be okay with the slaughtering of the Canaanites. Once you realize, okay, well, their ancestor raped Noah, his father Noah. So yeah, I get it. I get why they would be punished in such a way, and why they'd be cursed in such a way. So that's the tradition. Like, if you look forward, and then as you go through the rest of Scripture, like, okay, it makes sense. I totally get it. Because you might be like, wow, they're slaughtering a bunch of Canaanites who might be innocent. Women, children, whatever. And and now you're like, well, it's because their ancestor raped Noah, right? The savior of humanity back in the BC era, right? And so, I don't know, that should help you understand. Now, so there's more to Noah's life than what we understand from what we can gather from those couple of chapters in Genesis.
Sure.
And did some of the stuff that happened in Noah, the movie, maybe happen? I don't know, maybe, perhaps. Now, my argument against the Watchers and all that stuff is that's not something that I would now. So I guess I'm conflicted a little bit, because I do have this belief, and like I said, I was interested in creating like a channel where we talked about, religiousness is what I said we would call it, where we like talk about the weird shit in the Bible, and we like explore a little bit more deeply, and we talk about the weird shit, like Noah being raped by his son. The stuff that people don't really
Yeah,
talk
holy
about,
crap.
you would only have an understanding of if you delved a little bit deeper and maybe had some kind of like out of curiosity Bible studies and shit. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so the whole thing with the Nephilim is like they were the product of the fallen angels having sex with women, and then they created these
Heard that.
giants, right? And then the
Right.
giants. So the Nephilim is translated in more modern texts, specifically like the King James version is translated to giants. But when you look back at what the Nephilim came from, you realize that it's the sons of God, which you might equate to angels, and
Mm-hmm.
some people equate to angels, and some people equate to royalty, right? It just depends
Mm.
on people's translation. And then the daughters of men being human women. And so then you hear later in Joshua, or I'm sorry, Exodus, when Joshua and his buddy come back and they say, no, well, I guess a lot of them come back and they say, no, there's like a ton of Nephilim in Canaan. And so that's a problem. And Joshua and his buddy were the only ones who were like, no, there are Nephilim, but it's okay, we'll get them. God will take care of us. The Lord will deliver us, right? And that's why
Mhm.
Joshua and his buddy were the only ones who were the only adult males who were allowed into the promised land. But the other ones are like, no, there's Nephilim there, and we don't want to fuck with those guys because they're huge, they're fucking massive, they're scary, right?
Yeah.
Because they're
Right.
the sons of demons and women, right? So giants, scary people. And
Yeah.
so when you talk about the Watchers, do I think that there's probably something to that? Maybe, yeah. I mean, like, I don't know that they were necessarily made out of rock. I would assume that they were just giants. But then there's also like these egregores in Judaism, in the ancient Jewish texts that are giant rock monsters, right? So, is there something to it? Perhaps.
Yeah, like I
don't
said,
know. I just
in the
don't know
movie
enough
anyway,
about it.
the reason why they were covered is because when they came and crashed, like the penalty for interfering in man, trying to help man and then not, basically going against God's wishes and interfering, essentially they got like sort of suffocated by the earth sort of thing. So I know it sounds stupid to be like, oh, the rock monsters, but
They
essentially,
breathe oxygen though.
yeah. Well, they have like, yeah, it's weird. I don't know. But anyway, if you kind of took the Ents from Lord of the Rings and just made them out of rock instead, that is basically the visual I could give you for,
No, I totally get it.
except much more deformed.
Yeah. No, I immediately imagined. Oh gosh, what was that movie? There's like a big. Maybe it was like John Carter or whatever, where there's like. Some kind of big
Okay,
rock
yeah,
monsters.
sure.
Or maybe
Yeah,
even
yeah.
Futurama. I might be thinking of Futurama. There's like a rock monster. But
Well, even in The Hobbit, they had that. By the way.
yeah, so I mean, like it's a classic trope or whatever. But yeah, and then Mike says something interesting. He said, "And now we have monkeypox," which kind of like. Where did monkeypox come from? It came from Africa. Who's predominantly affected by HIV? Or I'm sorry, where did HIV come from? From Africa. And who's predominantly
Fauci?
from Africa? Black people, right? And who are the black people descended from? Ham. So like when you say, well, this curse, right? This curse of Ham is monkeypox and HIV, right? So like that, it seems like it
Oh, well.
carries on. And so I think Mike makes a good point. Mostly Wave says, I'm picturing Noah during that Norm Macdonald prison rape, but from Dirty Work. Oh! Norm Macdonald. God bless him. So yeah, there's some like real
One of the
fascinating
best.
stuff. Like when you start, I used to like kind of dismiss poo-poo the Old Testament, like there's nothing in there for me. But like the more I studied it, the more I'm like, okay, well maybe there's something for me here. Like this is like there's some really fascinating shit here, but like it's so hidden from us, right? Like you get kind of like the
Dude, that's
you
the
scratch
thing,
the
man.
surface of the Old Testament, and it's like, oh, these are like a bunch of kiddie stories or whatever. Yeah, there's some war epics and shit, but it's like it's not really that involved. You kind of like see it in passing, or the stories that people tell about the Old Testament are way more fascinating than reading the Old Testament as it is. And then like, but now like once you dig into it and actually start rooting around in there and kind of like studying what's going on there, there's some shit in there that's like really I talk about it in my Sunday school class all the time. And I guess that reminds me of what you said about the Watchers are kind of like redeemed. Did you say something like that? Like they're kind
Yeah,
of,
basically because they helped build the ark and defend Noah's family from
Do I think demons helped build the ark? I don't know. I mean, it says that Noah built it, and Noah wasn't an ark builder, right? Like he wasn't like that's not his profession. He was just like a holy guy or like a righteous guy in the eyes of the Lord. Now, do I think that a guy who was elderly would be able to build an ark? The Bible tells us he did, but it doesn't tell us how he did it. So, and it also doesn't tell us how Solomon built the temple, but there's also like extra biblical material that says that he enlisted demons to do it, which demons were the whipping boys. And like I said, in Ghost Adventures, though it doesn't have Jack Osborne in it, there was a guy who was talking about this. Yeah, I know, right? That's why it's not so. That's why it's not successful. Is because Jack Osborne is in it. But there was a guy who was like involved in some of these demonic ritual or these satanic rituals, and and this is how I kind of knew that Zach Baggins didn't know what the fuck he was talking about most of the time. Is because he said, so is there any possibility that some demons were summoned? And the guy was like, well, yeah, demons are the bread and butter of these ceremonies, right? They do the work, right? And so like for Zach Baggins is kind of like is this demonic? Is the same as Jack Osborne and Homegirl in Portals to Hell saying, is this a portal? You know, like everything is so very like generalized that they don't know what they're talking about anymore at a point. Mike said I need to turn the volume up a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So, do I think that demons were used as whipping boys back in the Old Testament? I do. I do believe that because there's not enough information that we're hearing or that's like given, and the Bible's kind of like. I think a lot of that stuff was redacted to some degree to not because imagine if the Bible said, hey. Yeah, Solomon used demons to build this magnificent temple, or Noah used demons to build this ark. People would be like, "Oh, demons are useful. Let's use them," right? Which is what the demon summoning or the Satan worshiping demon summoners they know this.
It'd be a little confusing. Let's just say that,
right? They use them for those purposes. Like, oh, I can use demons to help me do such and such. Did you just move? Did you just relocate, Jerry? You're relocating in the background there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's very possible. Do I think there was like a different stigma attached to? No, go back to the one you read. There was a difference. There was not the stigma. Yeah, there you go. Speaking, I'm doing this in
an homage to Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I don't think that there was perhaps if that were the case. Now I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that it's fair to believe that if that were the case. I would say that there was probably not the same stigma attached to using demons back then than there is now. Because we can look at it and be like, okay, I'm not going to summon a demon because that's pretty sketchy, right? But back then they were like, back then God was like, yeah, I just cast those motherfuckers out of heaven. So use them, absolutely. Use them to build your ark. Use them to build your temple.
Yeah,
use them to build your pyramids. I don't care.
Yeah, the way it was portrayed in the movie, at least, was not that. See, you would have to just assume that God passively said it was okay. Like, there was no recognition that, say, because God got involved in other ways, but he never was like, excuse me, I was punishing those fellers, and it seems to me like they're on some kind of redemption arc, Right. Like, there was no sort of conversation about that, but there was a conversation where, so as I mentioned, the grandfather blesses Emma Watson so her wound heals and she could give Seth babies, right? And they're on the ark. They haven't, the land has not come yet, and that at that point, Noah's like yelling at his wife, like, "What did you do?" It is my opinion that God said we have to start. That basically his thought was the reason why his two younger kids couldn't bring a woman onto the ark, and that Seth was with this girl who's barren, was that he was supposed to save all the animals who were innocent, and that God was going to start over with no humanity after them. That was his opinion, or his I don't know, interpretation, I guess, whatever. And so then Emma Watson becomes pregnant with twins, and she gives birth, and he says to them, "If it is a boy, I will not kill it, because then it'll just be the last man, no big whoop. But if it's twins, I will. If it's a girl, I will murder it as soon as it comes out."
Hmm.
And then she had twin girls.
Oh, so it's a twofer.
And it was yeah. And then he had this big old knife after fighting the king guy who was on the ark and winning. He went to go murder his grandchildren, and he then said, "I can't do it. I can't do it." And then just looked at God and was like, "I can't." And it was fine. It was like, okay, And then from all the torture of hearing all the people dying around the ark for like however many years they were at sea, listening to people die, and then
a year and a
also
half, or a year and 40 days or so.
Yeah. So then, and then also his kid betraying him and having the king like come to like murder him, and then almost murdering his two grandbaby daughters. He got wasted and was found naked. And then Ham was just like, "Hey, look at that! I'm leaving."
Ham was gonna clap those cheeks, those Noah cheeks. That's biblical. I'm sorry. That's the narrative. That's what happened.
Right? No, I'm not.
Why are y'all booing at me? I'm right.
Yeah, that's true, dude. Yeah. So that was it, man. And I watched it. And the stuff you're supposed to take away, I guess, whatever. I certainly did, but I was like, wow, there's a lot of wackadoo shit going on here. I think I have to ask Tom.
Yeah, I think so. And then my opinion, real quick, before we move on and do another thing or whatever.
Sure.
My opinion on redeeming. Now, this is something that I struggle with because I don't know the answer. I still don't. And truth be told, I haven't looked deep enough. So there's I'm like two. I have two opinions on this matter. So. We are called to go out and baptize the nations and the Great Commission. We're supposed to go out and we're supposed to try to save souls. We're supposed to go out and save them. Now, we understand that the angels were, a third of the angels were cast out of the heaven with Lucifer, and they became demons, and we are now aware of these invisible flying monsters called demons, some of which are in the abyss still, some of which are out and about just kind of doing their own thing, some of which interact with humanity on a regular basis, some of which are Emma Watson, right? And
right.
So I wonder, and I had asked myself this at one point. I don't know I don't remember when it was exactly. If I was perhaps under the influence of demons and perhaps like being compelled to believe one way or the other. But I wonder if there is a way to redeem demons, and if this is like a test. Now there is scripture that says to count God's enemies among our enemies, which demons would reasonably be the enemies of God. And we're not supposed to commune with demons and also commune with the Lord at the same time. So would I hang out with demons, or would I make an effort to congregate? And that's kind of why I like don't with Dave. I don't let him tell me some of the stuff. It's like I don't commune with demons. Likewise, because I can't commune with demons and commune with the Lord at the same time. So
yeah.
But I wonder
if
there is a way, because I've not seen anything scripturally that says that demons are forever lost. There is some stuff that's like, there are certain demons whose crimes were so egregious that they are like cast for eternity and chained. Specifically in Revelation, which is also very prophetic and very poetic and stuff. And it's hard to discern what's what it is or whatever. Sure. But I wonder if there is a way to redeem demons, and like if that's an untapped market. You know what I mean? As a business guy, right? I'm a business guy, so I'm always looking at SWOT analysis, right? And I'm looking at demons as an untapped market. Like, is there a way to redeem demons? Maybe they made a mistake. We've all made mistakes, right? Now I understand angels.
I've never made one. I don't know.
Not you, not you, nor Emma Watson, right?
Right.
These or Joaquin Phoenix dancing around his dead brother in the Viper Room.
Obviously.
So, now there's some stuff in there that like it alludes certainly, but I wonder, because angels were created as servants of God, and they were not created with free will, and humans were created. Now, if angels didn't have free will, there would be no Lucifer. There would be no 1/3 of angels. So they obviously have free will. They're just not allowed to express it, or they just weren't allowed to express it. like we are. God gave us.
Right.
We are kind of like God's special. We're God's special little people, right? Like we're God's retards, right? And we were allowed to express our free will, whereas angels were not. When they were cast out of heaven, and a third of angels went with them.
Right.
And so they're really not much different, except for the fact that we were created out of an abundance of love, whereas angels were created out of an abundance of like the necessity of servitude, right? And so when they rebelled, obviously that's a huge thing, rebelling against God, but we're also dealing with a God of the New Testament who is the same God the Father, but we also have Christ to intercede on our behalf. Now, I don't know if there is a way to save demons, but I'm also the guy who's like, as much as I count demons among the enemies of God as well as my own enemies for that reason, I wonder if there is a way to save demons, right? And to write them off entirely, I'm willing to do so if that's what I'm told. But I'm also like under the assumption that maybe I'm also under the impression that perhaps it would be pretty fucked up for us to just dismiss them entirely if there is a way to redeem them. So that's my issue. And that's something that I struggle with and that I'm still working on. And I hope
Well, you've mentioned it before on the show. I mean, I don't mean to be specific about demons, but again, going back to like the Predator show stuff, right? Like we've talked about how like, oh, how viscerally angry and what we imagine we wish we could do to those people. And then we go, well, wait, aren't you supposed to take kindly unto the, forgive the sinner, or hate the sin, not the sinner, all those kinds of things. And it's a difficult proposition. So I guess what I'm getting at is, if that is true, is that still, sort of, okay, they're a lost soul or they've done evil or whatever it is, but you have to try to, look in in a way that we forgive or rehabilitate. I don't know what it is, your opinion.
Have you rehabilitate a demon? Do we have like a home for rehabilitated demons?
Dude,
a
can
demon
we have
rehabilitation clinic?
Can we have them all go into rehab with Gary Busey, like that old, drug rehab show with Dr. Drew? Dude,
it's a reality show.
It's Dr. Drew is still he's still the psychotherapist or whatever.
So Jin says there is a saint in a Greek tradition who apparently did redeem a demon. Can you imagine though? Like,
really?
So like I've read some things similar to that, but I think that's why I kind of got onto that notion. I'm like, so have I done anything that is worse than a demon? What a demon did? It was vanity, right? Which is a sin that we've all committed, right? But sure. I was kind of granted grace. I mean, I was obviously granted grace, right? Am I deserving of it? No, but I was granted it. Now, is the same true of angels? I don't know. And that's kind of like my study into eschatology, right? That's what I study, right? And so that's what I'm working towards. I don't have an answer for you right now, which is why I kind of like, I'm spitballing here, but that's what that's what I deal with on a daily basis. Megabit says, you're a demon. Dads Against Predators. Which, by the way, let me tell you this. I've been watching, because I've watched the entire library of child predator shows.
Right.
And I've been watching OPP, Oklahoma Predator Poachers, or Predator Patrol, or whatever. And they do the whole, are you down with OPP? But like, they're pretty good. Like I watch a lot of I've been watching their stuff because like I said, I've watched everything.
We never poured one out for what's his face there, the one that was one of the best that got shot down. Remember you told me?
That dude he was the best. He was number one.
It was yeah, but what was it was
Smitty Word and Jaegerman Jensen. He was number one. Megabit actually sent it to me saying, because I saw it and I was like, why did all of his shit get taken down? And then Megabit had sent it to me later saying, hey, they got him, or whatever. I'm pulling it up right now because he was really, really good. Contempt for Creeps. He was the one who fucking like he fought the Predator, and then when the cops showed up, he fought the cops too. So he just fought everybody. Yeah. He was
his last video, I think, is what it. Listen, I think it's what it is because remember he called his brother, and the brother wanted to fight him. I bet they figured out his YouTube channel and they made some kind of complaint
about his family.
Some threat. Who knows? Yeah.
So let's do that then. We haven't done our shot yet. We haven't said hi to everybody because we're doing You Had Me at Paimon, how to How to summon a demon or whatever. We actually did an episode called "You Had Me at Summoning Demons," and we had what's his nuts on Dave. That we had our resident demon summoner come on the show, of course. But no, that's what I said to Megabit when he sent me that picture of how they got him. I said, "No, Mr. Krabs, he was number one. Smitty Werben Jaegerman Jensen."
Really was.
He was the best. I loved. Who was I watching the other day? that dude down in Southern California in San Diego, the PP.
Oh, PvP.
Whatever his name was, the one that calls everybody a piece of shit scumbag.
Isn't that People vs Predators?
People versus Predators. Yeah, that's right. I was watching that one the other day while I was putting together. Oh, by the way, let me say this real quick. I passed my inspection for falconry, so now I'm waiting on my sponsor's letter to send me so I can send in my application. It's literally sitting right here. I have my. People are going to take a screenshot and find my address because I just flashed it just now. But they, yeah, I got everything. Now I'm waiting on a sponsor letter. I sent in my $75. In 1 month's time, I'll have my falconry permit. I'll be out there hunting hunting hawks and shit. But no, I was out there and it was an old episode that I'd seen before. But the dude gets the People versus Predator gets the dude's mom on the phone. And he calls the kid the dude who called the kid. He said, "I'm here with your son, and he's a fucking piece of shit." this fucking loser. Like he's like calling this dude all sorts of names to the mom. And the mom's like, yeah, she doesn't even say anything, which I get it. Like I'd be pretty pissed off at my kid, but I think like even if my kid did some really heinous shit, I'd be like, first of all,
hey,
where are you at? Because I'm gonna come beat your ass. I don't care what my son did. He could have murdered anybody and raped the corpse or whatever. Like he could have done some really heinous shit.
He could have raped Noah for crying out loud.
You're not gonna talk about my son that way. But then we'll talk about it after I beat your ass into a pulp. Then we'll talk or whatever. But you can tell me that he's fucked up and whatever. But don't talk about my son that way. But yeah, he called it. I was laughing so hard because I was building that weathering pen or whatever, the kennel or whatever. And it was that episode where he was like, "Yeah, I'm talking to your son. He's a real fucking piece of shit, a real piece of work. This garbage human being, this fucking loser. You're a loser for having him, right?" Like he like really lays into the mom too. But yeah, he's another good one. I like him when he does that whole piece of shit scumbag shit. But let's do that then. Let's toast to the that guy.
Temper creeps.
He was he was number one, right?
Number one.
Yuck. That's that tequila stuff.
Oh my goodness.
I'm actually drinking salted, by the way. Shout out to Tennessee Legend, right? I'm only drinking their stuff today. It's actually salted caramel flavored whiskey. Ooh. And then the shot that I did was that Agavesaurus Rex. Really big fan of that stuff. It's really, it's something else. But yeah, I'm just drinking that whiskey straight. Like you can just pour it in a glass with ice or over the rocks rather. Not straight technically, but. And then the people who are in the chat, let's say hi to everybody. Amanda's new number one. She was here first. J-Dubs, Efren Flores, Mike in Manitoba, who
are we supposed to check in on Mike because he took 3 shots?
I was going to say he must have got his booster because he was number 4 today. Joseph Byrer, Jacob, Jin, Megabit, Stephicus, Bodai, and Astroposi, who's probably long since gone back. He got his shout out and then he took off. But no, I don't know if he did. He might be listening, and I certainly appreciate.
Well, thanks everybody. No. It's great. Thank you all for being here. We're still at over 700 followers.
Yeah, barely. We jumped up to 704, and then I was alerted that we dropped down to 701. So we're still over 700, though. I don't know who I owe it to.
Come on, guys. Where are all your alt accounts? I mean, come on.
Sign up, for goodness sake. Stop canceling your subscription with your alt accounts. And then Jin said, also, the recently canonized Saint Paisios got told by an angel, "Ayo, dude, stop praying for the devil. That dude's too far gone." Now, am I saying we should try to redeem Lucifer? No. I mean, no. I don't know. But would it be okay, I think, to, like, explore the possibility of redeeming demons? I think, like, Maybe that's something that I'm exploring.
Oh, dude, you could have a show with Jack Osborne called Redeemin'.
That's the
Wouldn't that
only
be cool?
person that I'm sorry, Jerry, but that's the only person that I would work with
Listen.
on that
I
topic. So
I offered you the idea, so
well,
I
I'll
think.
take it. Maybe like as a humble man, as humble as I am,
Mhm.
I would say if Jack Osborne feels a better chemistry with you, I would say that perhaps
No,
it would
here's
make
what
more
I would
sense to
do.
go with
Let's
you.
Here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna be like the main guy, right? But on every episode, like say for example, you're at a house and there's supposedly a demon there. You and Jack Osborne, you guys are doing the interviews, some of the scoping out, maybe a little bit of history, right?
Yeah.
Then they go, well, because we are the stars of the show, we have Jerry to go in and potentially address the demon. Because, of course, we have another episode to film after this. Whereas, if,
Jerry's
Jerry has,
expendable.
if Jerry has a little bit of an entanglement, let's say, we could always find a new stooge. So, that way, at least I get a little bit of dara, right? While, the getting's good. And, also may be able to fist fight a demon or something. I don't know.
That'd be tight. I would pay
just saying,
a bunch
right?
for that. I would pay the $2.99 because I'm a military. I'm a veteran, and they have
Oh,
a
you get the
veterans
discount?
discount for travel channel. The Travel Channel streaming online with starring Jack
Dude,
Osborne.
why would you get that as a straight? Like, why would you not just get the whole Discovery Plus then?
That's what I'm saying. Like Discovery Plus, like it's streaming service is like
Okay.
$2.99
Alright.
for military
see.
veterans. I think they like cut $1 off, which like if I'm
It's $6
if I'm
for the
being
rest
honest,
of us, my
Jerry,
friend. Okay,
all my years of service to this nation is
worth it.
totally worth it. If I can get $1 off my Discovery Plus with starring Jack Osborne,
That's $12
Alright.
a year. You realize what you could do with that?
I could get a subscription to Netflix. I guess I don't know for a month
For a month.
to a real streaming service.
For a good day.
And I said Netflix, but in reality, they're so busy pushing pedophile shit.
That's
Anyway,
true.
I could
Well, will say
actually
this
become
to
a
you.
member of like CCP or PvP.
Oh,
I don't know if
yeah.
they have memberships or whatever. I don't know. I'm not a member
Well,
of
I
any
think
of those things. There was some other Predator show that you know what? I tried to get our boy from Canada, the funny one. I tried to get him. I tried to get him on the show. I really pushed it. Like I was one of the first people to comment on his shit. I got another Predator catcher on the hook. I'm trying to get him on. But I really tried to get our boy from Canada on the show because I thought that would be the tightest thing ever, having our dude come on the show and talk
that'd
about.
be amazing.
Yeah, I'm trying. Believe me, I'm trying. I think that would be a great program or a great episode.
Well, let me tell you, Tom.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think if nothing else, the title is potentially, a barrier more than anything as far as the show. Because I want to throw this out there. Don't forget the people I got on FOJ Live when we had nobody.
I know you had fucking the dead guy who's not dead now.
Well, John McAfee.
Yeah, you had John McAfee. That was one of the funniest episodes I ever saw. Of course, other than the episode that I was on.
Right.
Or the couple episodes I was on because we did like the voiceover where like the guy was talking about explosive diarrhea and shit.
Yes.
Yeah, the FOJ Live episodes that we were on were moderately
Dude, they were
funny.
classic. They were
But
awesome.
the John McAfee episode was very funny.
But I'm just saying, I also got don't forget, I got the people
yeah,
who
you got
direct.
some other crypto guys on there.
Well,
Monsters.
but we also got we got all the small town monsters people on
That's the guy.
multiple times. Then we also got the couple that created the movie. Well, it was about the flat earthers. It was pretty big out there for the last couple of years. That came out. We got them.
David something. We had him on this show too, and I called him Dave. I said, "Do you mind if I call you Dave?" And I kept calling him Dave, even though I didn't answer.
Is that true? Really? It's
I
so
did.
funny.
And then I called
Dude.
Dave Outlandish David. I always call people the opposite of what they prefer to be called.
But dude, yeah, we got we got a guy who did a documentary about the Vegas shooting. Yeah, we got that guy. Like, dude, I was just like, we have, because I would, you know what it was? You know what the
You
key
would
was
just
for
write
me?
people and ask them to be on your show, and they would
Yeah.
come on. It was so funny
Yeah.
because I remember. I'll tell you what, Jerry. I was
Yeah.
sitting. I so seldom watch, and this is why probably one of the reasons why you ended up becoming like my first choice for this show or to replace V was because I remember sitting at my table and I never never watch live streams, and I rarely. I can count on one hand how many podcasts or how many YouTube shows I watch, other than the Predator Catcher shit.
Sure.
But I was sitting at my table, actively watching you talk to John McAfee that day.
I remember you in the chat.
And it was so funny because Tim was like, he dropped the N-bomb, and I remember,
Immediately, yeah.
And I remember John McAfee being like, I feel like you don't have an N-word pass. He like corrected him, and like he scolded Tim for dropping the N-bomb, and that was kind of like when you won me over, because I'm like, this dude is like, how did he get John McAfee? And it like the dude was like, can I shoot up like in the middle of this show? He's like, I gotta go because I gotta shoot up heroin. And you're like, whenever you gotta shoot up heroin, man, you go shoot up heroin. Like, it's such a weird episode, but I was like, dude, man, this guy is I didn't know if like I guess I probably didn't know enough about you or whatever, like who you had on previously, but I was like, this dude got John McAfee on his show to just come and chat, which is just like whatever. And like later you filled me in on some information, but I was like, man, this dude had John McAfee on his show, which is so funny. Like, even however it happened or however it came to be, it's so funny to me that like John McAfee,
I'll tell people right now,
his island safe space,
or if he was on the boat at that time, I don't even remember what, but yeah. But like basically, I'll just tell people right now, this is exactly what happened. He was on Twitter, and it was either him or assuming it was him, he said, look, I'm tired of trying to go on mainstream stuff. Joe Rogan won't have me on, this, that, and the other. If you've got a show, hit me up, and let's make it happen. And I was like, no, come on.
That was an invite to come on the show.
I was like, no, come on, right? So then I said, you know what? Because here, just straight facts. You know, there was one time when I was playing in bands still, and at the time, like one of my favorite bands was doing auditions for a second guitar player, and I was like, man. And my buddy was like, you should, you're so good. And I'm like, nah, I can't. And there's some part of me for the rest of, like, I'm sure I wouldn't have made it, but it's not, just because I didn't, And so then this happened, and I go, you know what? This motherfucker's crazy. Why shouldn't I ask him? And then I looked up on YouTube, like, all the channels he'd been on, different shows. And there were ones with, like, maybe 100 views or this or that. And I'm like, you know what? I could pull that off. Fuck this. And so I emailed his wife, like I was told, and then we had a little back and forth. And the key for anybody who's going to start a show and you want to try to get someone on before you actually really should, I guess, because you don't have the audience, tell them all the views and listens you get across platforms.
Oh.
Because obviously, if they looked at the FOJ Live subs, it was like 50 people or something.
I was 3 of them with all my alts.
Yeah, it was like, I don't remember what it was. It was kind of pathetic. But on the other hand, I had, the podcast, as you know, Tom, podcast listens and hits. Holy crap. I would get amazing numbers on that. So I'd be like, all right, the live stream is just, I would fib a little. And I go, this is what we use for recording purposes. Like, it ends up going up live, yes, but our real audience is on the podcast. And I would give those numbers in that way. And then they were like, oh, all right, sure, And, yeah, dude. So then
Jerry duped John McAfee.
I duped John McAfee into coming onto my show and doing heroin or whatever.
It's so funny. I remember I saw the live viewers was like a lower number, and I was like, I can't believe I have a real shot to like get on here and fucking and like talk and people see my shit when I say shit.
Yeah.
I was actually on Prey Protectors last night. They were doing a live premiere or whatever, and I was I was one of like a dozen people watching. And I was in there, and I was cracking jokes, man. And that's my thing, is like I'll crack jokes, and people will fucking, they'll like reach out to, or they'll follow the show, or that's how people find us, or whatever. Like,
for sure,
or whatever. And so I was like on there, I was busting jokes or whatever, like left and right, so that people would be like, oh, let me follow this guy because it's pretty funny. So I was on there. I was cracking some pretty good jokes, and like some of these dudes were like, "Wow!" It's like one of them was like, I used the expression "pulling ass." Like that was a repeat joke. That was a recycled joke. I said something. I was like, "How do these dudes like look in the mirror and think that they can pull some ass like that?" And like this person was like, they were cracking up laughing. I don't know. It may have been Bodai or whatever. It might have been a person who like joined and like left immediately. But you know, like that was like the sort of thing, and I do that occasionally. I'll go on to whatever, some random program or whatever. Let's do this, Jerry. Since I'm good and liquored up at this point, let's talk about King Paimon, so that we can call this episode "You Had Me at King Paimon." Right? I pulled him on.
Sure. Okay.
I pulled him up on Wikipedia. Right? I pulled his ass up. I pulled fucking Paimon's ass up. And I'll tell you this. I'll tell you another thing, another interesting thing. This is not a coincidence. It's so weird. I had a dream not too long ago, and the only dreams I have are dreams that are demon related, right?
About Paimons?
Well, about Siemens. About a Noah getting butt plugged by his plugged by his son. Whenever I'm becoming Africa, the nation or the continent. Now, I had a dream recently too where I was worried that we were coming on the show and we were talking shit about Satan, and it became a problem. Now, you know how like sometimes dreams are very vague about how like things played out or whatever, but like we were worried about, we were talking about Satan, we were having, and it became a problem. And so I think that's what we should do today. I think we should make fun of Paimon for the last 10, 20 minutes, and we should see how funny we can be. And
okay, can I let me?
Stephicus actually said I used to have demon dreams all the time when I was a kid for some reason. So yeah, go ahead, Jerry. Go ahead, take over.
Well, I just wanted to say, I'm down. I just, if I could do a, whoops, it was sent to me.
Oh yeah. Please.
By a member of the show. I will do one. It was sent to me.
Oh, I guess it was Don. Was it Don?
No. This is good old Rufus again. This is
really?
Rufus. Yeah, this is Rufus. Cool. He hit me up on Telegram. I actually saw the message.
Telegram.
Yeah. So Tom, I could either make you guess or I'll just skip it and then tell you the rest. Yeah, how do you want to do
it? Give me the blanks and I'll. Did I say everybody's name? Somebody in the chat tell me if I said. Did I? Okay.
Yeah.
I want to make sure. Oh, I did. I got to ask the joke. Go ahead, give me the blanks, and I'll fill in the blanks.
Okay. Blank.
For consistency.
Okay. Blank at California Senior Home after blank served instead of blank.
Okay, I don't need you to repeat it. I got it.
Okay.
I mean, I wrote it down. I don't have
Right.
it. I like to put the camera on me as I'm thinking so that people are like, oh, he's not looking up on Google or whatever. So they don't know that I'm looking up on Google, right?
Yeah, no, this is all live. It's organic. This is not.
Okay, so blank at California Senior Home.
Mm-hmm.
I'm drunk enough to where I don't realize, like, when I don't write properly. It doesn't blank at California Senior Home after blank served instead of blank. Can you give me some, like, help me out? Because
like some context?
Some
okay, so something happened at this California Senior Home after there was a dietary snafu, let's say.
I almost used that expression the other day when I was subbing, and I realized that it was not appropriate. I said it was because the kids were acting a little crazy, and I almost said snafu, and I was like, no, that's not right. I can't say that to the administration.
Wow.
Instead of so it's like they served the wrong food instead of something.
They served something, right? Exactly.
I would say. Okay, too easy.
Okay, all right. I bet. I mean, you're good at this.
abnormal pregnancy at California senior home after artificial bull insemination served instead of Taco Tuesday.
Oh, I was waiting for pudding. But that, I guess, is a little too on the nose.
Taco Tuesday, no.
Yeah.
You got to remember, I've been subbing all week, so I know, like, all I'm thinking about.
Oh, that's
is, like,
right. Yeah,
lunches,
Pizza
right?
Friday, Taco Tuesdays. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's up. All right. Well, very close. Very, very close. Death at California senior home after.
I was way off.
Death at California senior home after dishwasher soap was served instead of juice.
Ugh.
Yeah. And
I can see why Rufus sent that to you, because it's so gross, it's so weird.
Oh, it's incredible, isn't it? And so it's first of all, I want to say this is not the first time. This is not the first time. This is not. This is not the first time OJ got away with murder.
Killing a bunch of old people with soap.
That's it. And so here's the thing. So it was supposed to be OJ, literally. I'm not even. It was actually supposed to be orange juice, and turns out the only reason this happened is because the orange juice quality is so poor, the residents didn't even notice the difference in taste. So as an investigative journalist, I called up the nursing
Procter
home,
and Gamble. Oh, okay.
And I asked them, hey, where do you get your OJ? And they said, we get
from Todd.
We get organic orange juice from North Dakota, which, as you know, is
known for its orange juice.
Is known for its orange juice.
Yuck. I'll tell you what, Jerry.
Yeah.
There are some things I'm so grossed out by, but drinking like laundry detergent or a dishwasher soap is like one of the worst things for me.
It's pretty bad.
If you ever wonder like what sort of thing grosses out Tom Miller, it's soap. It's eating soap or like any kind of soap products, right? I don't remember what I said blank at California.
You said accidental pregnancy or something? Because of the bull semen instead of Taco Tuesday?
I remember artificial bull insemination, but
that's right. Yeah.
Pregnancy. Okay, that's what I was trying to write down. Because I need to remember.
You know, I'm telling you,
I forget.
This is so bad. I don't want
to. I'll forget if I don't remember or if I don't write it down. Go ahead, Jerry.
See, I just don't. I know you wanted to go over. Now I'm looking at the rest of them, going, "Oh, can we just do them?" But.
Jerry, let's do Paimon. Let's do Paimon today. And
okay.
We'll move on. We'll reserve a special time every episode for the whoopsies. Okay. Because
we haven't talked about the true formatting of. You know,
we talked a little bit about
back.
Paimon. I don't want to talk about Paimon next week. All right.
No. What I'm saying is you know, once you go back to the formatting of the show originally, that is going to mean we actually have a. You know what I mean?
We'll always have time for whoopsies. Okay.
I see.
I'm subbing tomorrow, which is why I have to kind of behave a little bit at least tonight.
Oh, sure.
I'm subbing for half the day tomorrow, so I have to.
Oh, I see.
I'll tell you what. I subbed for 3 days this week already with the same class, and I'll tell you, having subbed for the same class for 3 days in a row, I understand why teachers grow to love their children. By the end of the year, they're upset to see them go, because after 3 days, you know, I'm like, man, I love these kids, they're so good, even though they're rotten, absolutely the worst kids in the world, because I'm a substitute and kids are always rotten or whatever when they're a substitute, but even though they're rotten, I'm like, I love them to death. And I said, I hate to see them go, but it's the same kids. Some of them I've met before because they're in my youngest son's grade. It's the only reason I continue to sub at the school is because it's my youngest son. I love my youngest son. I know we're not allowed to say this, but your favorite son, right?
I was
or
gonna
your
say you're
favorite
on
kid,
record right now. I don't know if you want to.
I am on the record. But because my youngest son was a son that I retired from the army when he was not even a year old. And so like
Right.
he and I grew up together, right? So he's my buddy.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I will follow him throughout his K through 12 career as much as possible. And you know, I
Like in
don't
a
love
Billy
him
Madison sort of way.
right. Every 2 weeks, I'll devote 2 weeks to every year or whatever. But you know, and it's so fucked up because like, you know, you're not supposed to have a favorite kid, but I'll tell you, I understand why that's an issue for mothers or for certain parents because
Mm.
you have that same experience for all your kids. But for me, my older two sons, who I love equally as well,
Sure.
uh, I didn't have that experience of them being babies through going to school or whatever
Mm-hmm.
that I
Sure.
had with my youngest son because I retired from the army when he was not even a year old. And so he and I were buddies. Like that's
Mm.
we had our like all this time together or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
so he and I are BFFs, right?
Sure.
And so
Which is strange. Can I tell you?
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, you're strange. This is I don't quite unorthodox, Tom, because as I can tell, you are, as far as I know, a white male. So the fact that you have any feelings other than cannibalism towards your own
Right.
child,
Or hatred towards person of color, people of color.
yeah, or
Because
just yeah,
he's half Mexican is the thing.
that's right. Yeah.
But no, he and I are super tight, and it's just because he and I we would spend our days together. In some of my darkest times, he and I were, you know,
Tom, he's a
and I feel
minority,
for
I
him.
know, but can you please not say it was your darkest time?
My darkest times, his skin color times. But like, I don't know. It's just I get it when mothers say like I can't have a favorite son, and I don't have a favorite son, but I have a favored son. The
Oh
son that
yeah.
I grew up with, right? The son
Mm-hmm.
who I watched from birth to school age. I
Mm-hmm.
was with him. And so he was with me during my darkest times, and he and I were buds. We would play, you know, Doom together every
Mm-hmm.
day. When as soon as his older brother went to school, he and I would play Doom together. We would play video games together.
You committed
So
grand theft together, if I remember you
we
telling
did,
me.
we did. It's so funny. My middle son is the one who plays Grand Theft Auto the most. But yeah, like
Oh.
it's so weird. Like, but he and I, and so these kids, they of course came up to me at the end of the day. I'm like, hey, this is it. I know we've spent the last 72 hours together essentially. I said,
Mm-hmm.
but you guys, they were upset that I was leaving because I'm a little bit nicer than their normal teacher because their normal teacher demands structure and everything.
Mm.
And whereas I was like, well, we're going to do our best to maintain the structure, but at the same time, I know that I'm a sub, and you can act a fool all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so which is always the case. Anytime I sub for a class, I know that the kids are not the kids they purport themselves to be. Because
Sure.
I'm the sub, kind of like a cop deals with everybody that they, or I'm sorry, 1/10 of the people that they deal with in a day are bad guys, whereas the jailer, everybody that we dealt with was the bad guy. Kind of like this is the
Right.
same way that the sub is. 100% of the people that we deal with are people who are like, okay, well, this is a sub, I can act a fool, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how these kids are. And but at the same time, these kids are probably mistreated by the normal teacher because the normal teacher talks to the other teachers and they're like, oh, you have so and so for your class, well, let me tell you about so and so, he's a little motherfucker. Right?
Oh my
Whereas like
goodness.
I'm like, I
Wow.
know that you're, you know, you're 8 years old, I know that you
Allegedly.
probably have some, right, it might be an orphan situation where it's like they're actually an adult that looks
If
like
they're Cuban,
they're
add
dwarf.
10 years.
Right. So I'm like, I know that you probably have some shit going on at home that I'm not privy to.
Oh.
And so I'm going to treat you as I would treat my own son. Because my
make them go
son
to the bathroom
is that
outside.
same age, right? Yeah, I'm gonna kick your ass out. So some of these kids are like, and I'll tell you, one of these kids he is clearly troubled. He's got some stuff going on. He's probably like overlooked by his teachers. Teachers probably like dismiss him because they know a little bit about him based on what the previous teacher. And here's something you didn't know.
I mean, it's
Teachers
not okay,
sometimes change places. So like somebody who was a 5th grade teacher one year might be a 3rd grade teacher the next year, or they might be a 1st grade teacher the next year.
Oh yeah.
So, for instance, my oldest son had this teacher, Miss Smith, for instance, for an example, I'll give you the name. Miss Smith, when he was in 3rd grade, she went on and became a 5th grade teacher. My middle son entered the 5th grade, and he had another teacher, not her, but I substituted for my middle son's teacher, and I was able to kind of like discuss, chat, or visit with my oldest son's teacher, who was now a 5th grade teacher, even though he was a 3rd grade teacher before. Now she's back to being a 3rd grade teacher, and I'm across the hall from her. She is my youngest son's teacher. She was not my middle son's teacher. So they kind of like flop around a little bit. And here's something maybe you don't know about your children's teachers. They move around a little bit within their schools. One year they might be a 5th grade teacher, the next is a 3rd grade teacher, the next is a 1st grade teacher. It moves around quite a bit. I had two of my sons had the same teachers in multiple times, right? You know, like it's weird. It's weird like that. So me as a substitute, I'm able to see that and experience that, and it moves around. It's so crazy. And you'll never see that as somebody on the outside, but me on the inside, I'm able to see that. So I'm telling you, so this one of my son's teachers is now my youngest son's teacher. And so I talk to her as a teacher across the hall from her in the same grade, not necessarily my son's teacher, but across the hall from my son's teacher. Very weird situation. But I'm like, I tell these kids, I'm like, listen, because they're very upset to see me go, because I've been very lenient with them because I'm a substitute. And I'm like, I know that you guys are like no different than my youngest son, whom I love, and I know that he has some stuff going on. I was like, so I love you guys. I love you. I do. But here's the thing. You guys, they were very upset to see me go, and they came up and ran up and gave me a hug when I told them that none of them were getting detention. So the elementary equivalent of a detention is a reteach, where they have to go home and they tell their parents, "Oh, I got to reteach today," or whatever. I didn't give them. I have never given a reteach in my entire substitute career, which has spent no more.
Does that involve more work for you?
No, not at all. I literally tell them, "Hey, you have a reteach," and then it goes home to their parents, and they miss recess the next day. So I've never given a reteach ever. And even when I've threatened them with reteaches, I've let them, like, when I get to reteach, they stand by the fence. I'm like, "Go play, get out of here." I'm not serious when I say you have a reteach or whatever. And I've never written it down. And here's the funny thing. Oh, but let me say this. They came up to me and gave me a hug because I was like legitimately nicer than the normal teacher, I guess, because I'm a substitute, and I was like cool with them for the last 72 hours. I said, listen, I was like, they were upset to see me go, and I said, listen, you guys don't realize this right now, but I said, I'm not going anywhere. My son is not going anywhere. You guys all know my son. They all knew who my son was. They were like, "Oh, you're Sterling's dad, right?" I said, yeah. So they were like, I said, I'm not going anywhere. I said, I may not be your sub for the next year, but maybe a year from now, I'll be your sub, because I'll be doing that chaplaincy residency. I said, but maybe a year from now, I'll be your sub again. I said, because I specifically pick my son's grades and my son's schools whenever it comes available to sub for. I said, so you'll know me for the next 10 years or 9 years until you go off to college. I was like, I'm not going anywhere. As long as you know my son, you will know me. If you ever need me, reach out to me. I'm here for you. I said, I'm not going anywhere. You may
that kind
have
of experience
me.
with these kids?
Yeah, well, not necessarily just these kids, but it's so funny because, like, some of the kids that I had in previous years, like last year, they still come up to me. They're like, Mr. Miller, and they're so excited to see me, and they come up and give me a hug. And because, like, this is their impressionable youth, and this is why it's so dangerous that these people are grooming kids, because kids are so impressionable. they will come up to me and they'll say, "Mr. Miller, it's so yay, yay, Mr. Miller." And I've had maybe 24, not even 24 hours, 8 hours experience with these kids, but they remember that. And they love you for that, because they're like, that was in 8 hours that I had a good experience where I was like, I knew that I was cared for, that somebody actually loved me, that wanted me to do well, that gave me a break when I was acting like an asshole, right?
Yep.
So like, it's so, they're so impressionable at that age, and that's why it's so dangerous. When I see these predator catchers, I'm like, yes, keep going, because these kids are so impressionable, and they come up and they do. It's so funny because I had one kid, and then like the next time I saw them months later, and she came up and she was wearing a dress. I was like, "Oh, you look like a princess. You look so cool today." And she was like, "Thank you." And she was so excited. This year, after the summer, I hadn't even thought of this kid. She came up and gave me a hug. She's like, "Mr. Miller." They're so impressionable. So you have to understand that about your kids. You need to be paying attention to that sort of shit. I don't even remember how
And don't forget everybody. The same teenagers who cannot be held responsible for their parents' impression on them and get into thousands of dollars of student loan debt that the rest of us now have to pay for are the same kids who can judge what their gender is, and we should cut off their genitalia. So
yeah, you absolutely
just
should. As soon as
make sure you
grader,
keep that in mind.
as soon as your third grader says that they want to chop off their nuts, do it.
Yeah, that's it.
As soon as the other one wants to chop off a piece of their butt cheek and turn it into a penis, you should do it. All right.
Yep.
King, you had me at King Paimon. Let's talk about Paimon. Paimon. Status and rank. So, like I said, the Ars Goetia discusses the Lesser Key of Solomon. Ars Goetia. We've talked about this before with Dave. Damn, I wish I knew what we were going for with this whole me subbing or whatever, how we got onto that topic. But and then the
I don't remember.
Pseudomonarchia Daemonum. I'm actually subbing tomorrow at the same school, different class or whatever. But yeah, watch your kids, guard your kids, guard your wife. Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, and then Dictionnaire Infernal, which is French. It's kind of like the equivalent. They all refer to him as a king. Refer to him as the ninth spirit in the Goetia. So is this for the people who Jin says, "How long will it be before your son paraphrases Jesus? He who knows me shall know my Father." That's an interesting one. So as forgiving as I am with the kids, that brings us back to our demon discussion about, like, we expect God the Father to forgive us when we have committed more egregious sins than the original sin that the demons committed when they were cast out of heaven. So if we were to try to justify their whatever, it's so weird. That's the whole thing with eschatology, with studying demons and whether we are to forgive them. It's so crazy to me. That's why I struggle with it. So anyways, good point, Jin. Relationship in the hierarchy, it refers to King Paimon. I think all of them refer to him as a king. Some of them refer to him as having 200 legions. One of them refers to him as having 25 legions. Now, here's the thing with the legions. When you talk about legions was the largest unit of measure for the Roman military at the time of the Greek New Testament. So that's why when we hear about we are legion, it's referring to we are the biggest unit of measure in the Roman military at the time. So when they say that, if you're like, there's a big difference between 200 and 25 legions, you're right. But at the same time, 25 legions is still a fuckload of people, or a fuckload of demons, right?
Yeah, that's a lot.
Critical.
If they were in line in front of me at a McDonald's or whatever,
you're gonna be there for a hot minute. Right?
I'm gonna be here for a while. Yeah.
So here's the appearance. And we're only going through this specifically so that we can call this episode "You Had Me at King Paimon," and so that
Bojangles.
Bojangles, no, Bodai. Will feel pretty silly about having left early.
I hope he or she does come back. I'm gonna say I hope they come back.
I do too, but I hope they do tune in later, at least at a minimum, right? So the appearance, it says here that according to the Ars Goetia as well as the Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, And here's the thing about those two books, specifically the Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, which is the Latin version. It kind of is the Latin translation of, or the Latin study of these demons, which is why you should study Latin at a bare minimum. I mean, it is the foundation of it is one of the foundations of our language. Uh, the Pseudomonarchia Daemonum is the Latin version. It kind of describes the demons and what they do. It says that he is described as a man riding a dromedary camel, preceded by men playing loud music, particularly trumpets, as well as cymbals. So when you imagine, like I said, he was riding a camel, looks like a regular dude. A lot of these demons, as you read through the Ars Goetia Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, they describe them as having two appearances. One as something, which could be like an animal, it could be like a weird figure, something, or as a man. And as the man, because they present themselves kind of in the same way that angels in Genesis, when they came to Sodom and Gomorrah, presented themselves as men, and then the people in Sodom and Gomorrah tried to rape them or whatever. This is the Old Testament that people don't talk about necessarily.
That children's
people were
story.
trying to rape everybody in the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the ways is they appear as a man. In this case, King Paimon appears as a man on a dromedary, a one-humped camel. Now, when it talks about when he presents himself, you'll see in these ancient texts that they will talk a certain way, or they will speak to you, or they present themselves in such a way to the person who is summoning them. In this case, it says that he's described as having a hoarse voice, and he speaks in his native language, but doesn't necessarily describe what that native language is. If it's like Greek, Hebrew, or like this
Pig Latin.
Tower. Yeah, Pig Latin. Can you imagine? Like he shows up and you're like, oh, I understand what you're saying even without you having to translate. Or this Tower of Babel language, like whatever preceded the Tower of Babel. But you have to command him, hey man, you need to speak to me in English, and he will speak to you in English. Now his powers, I know we talked about this a little bit earlier. His powers are specifically in science and answering other questions. So his area of expertise is in fact science and secret things such as knowledge regarding the earth, its waters, and its winds. Okay, so if you have questions about meteorology, King Paimon is the guy to consult. But this is the fascinating thing about the Ars Goetia and the Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, which you can buy on Amazon. That's where I bought them.
Obviously,
I have copies of them. I bought them and I put them in a safe where my kids can't access them, because I don't want my kids accidentally summoning like Paimon, right? So I put them in a safe, and
also you don't want like peanut butter and jelly smudges on them. You know what I mean?
I don't. Right? Yeah. Obviously, I don't. That's the last thing I want. Is like a mustard stain after they eat a hot dog and they're like paging through the sonoric. The Pseudomonarchia Daemonum is a very nice, neatly printed book, and what they did was they had deviant artists draw pictures of these demons. So like you have the image from the sigil, and then the image from the Ars Goetia, which is drawn by the people who have summoned such and such demon. But then they also have deviant artists who have drawn their interpretation of such and such demon based on the description. So this book that I have is a very nice book, neatly printed book, very fancy, like leather bound book or whatever. But it has the original, the English, and that has the original Vulgate Latin. So you can read it in both forms, and it describes what that particular demon does and how it presents itself and what you need to do in order to summon it. And so and why you would summon such a demon. But the pictures are very interesting, and this is something that not a lot of people are privy to, is like I said, this guy King Paimon, he's a real angel, former angel. Now
he's a real SOB.
He's a real son of a bitch. This King Paimon. We're sitting here talking shit about demons or whatever, and that's why I had that nightmare the other day about, like, we come down here on the show and we're talking shit. And I remember in the nightmare, I was like, we were very careful. We were like, we're gonna kick a hornet's nest, right? And by doing this,
a one-humped hornet's nest,
a one-humped dromedary hornet's nest.
That's it.
But we were specifically in my dream. We were talking about Satan, talking shit about Satan. But yeah, like you sit here and you think like this King Paimon guy, and specifically the movie Hereditary, that's a real figure, right? And especially if you're a Christian or a Jew or even a Muslim, this is an Abrahamic demon who is referenced in all the texts as a figure that exists. And I know in Muslim tradition, they refer to him as jinn or whatever. It's kind of the same thing as angels or whatever. In Jews, they have their own situation, but they share a lot of the Judeo-Christian angels and demons. And this is an actual figure that if you believe in the Bible, if you believe in Scripture, you have to at least acknowledge the existence of this particular figure. It's no different than to say, well, Noah's Ark is real, but Paimon is not. Or Noah is real, Paimon is not. You can't say those two things. It would be like saying, well, Noah's real, but Abraham is not. You have to believe in both of them if you believe in one of them, right? Which is why
you can't. I mean,
go ahead.
It's the same. It's the same place, right? It comes from the same place. You can't say, I don't want to be. You can't say the hamburger is real, but the cow is not, or something. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Like
or the hamburger is real, but the hamburglar is not, right?
Oh yeah.
We know that the hamburglar is real.
Did you know he pulled me over one time?
The hamburglar.
Mm-hmm.
Was he? So Jerry, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
I'm imagining this situation. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
If you've ever seen the movie No Country for Old Men, you know that the hamburglar is the bad guy, right? He's one bad guy.
That's right.
But you know the hamburglar pulling you over is a lot like Anton Chigurh pulling over the guy, and he's saying, "Hey, can you unload these chickens from the back of your truck so that he can steal
very
the truck?"
much that kind of situation.
Is that what happened, Jerry?
It was very similar, and it was funny too because I thought to myself, you know, this guy's really trying to portray himself as upstanding, but
but he's wearing a black and white striped.
But he changed clothes, but he had the black mask on still.
Yeah.
And the other thing was he was willing to take a bribe. His the hamburglar, as I knew later he was, believe it or not, Tom, the hamburglar had very greasy palms.
Terrible.
Hey, look, you know what?
I'll take it.
We're 2.5 hours in, and I'm making hamburglar greasy palm jokes. Okay.
I wrote it down. Bribing the hamburglar. So that's gonna end up in the description. Okay.
Fantastic.
Jerry, what do you have? What do you have to say before you go ahead?
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, I want to thank you for listening to my rendition, my retelling of Noah the movie, with ass to ass Jen McCarthy or whatever.
Jennifer Connelly doing a
Jennifer
double-sided
Connelly.
dildo.
That's right, double-sided dildo, ass to ass, is actually what they were chanting outside of the Ark in this movie. They were going ass to ass. So I want to thank you. Yeah. It wasn't that Noah was, because, like, say, okay, ladies, I know you don't like to hear this, but if you have a history, like, let's say you're in a circle of friends, and then you make your way around the whole circle of men, and then the last guy marries you, that guy is aware that everybody else, you know what I'm saying? And so what happened in this version of the story of Noah, so instead of listening to everybody die outside of the Ark and it torturing the poor man, what he kept hearing outside, and of course they were making bubbly sounds because they were underwater, it was just
everybody drowning, begging for more Jennifer Connelly ass to ass dildos.
That's right. That's exactly what it was. So
See, this is one of those benefits of like not knowing any of my wife's old circle of friends or whatever.
Mm-hmm. You're
it's
who?
like I never like we've had that discussion.
No, Tom.
Of,
You're
like,
who?
My wife.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. You know, I never knew any of those people. I know of, and I have talked with one.
Oh, I know. You told me.
People.
I have to, meet up with them. I understand.
But yeah, so I never had to have that discussion where I was like, I know that none of my friends have ever banged my wife, right?
Well, that's
so yeah, that's a plus, and that's why you kind of got to marry outside of your own social circle. You never want to,
because right.
They can lie to you and they can tell you, oh, I've only been, they can tell you their what people now call their body count, right? They can tell you that number, and whatever that number is, you multiply it by 3, and if you're still like above that number, it's cool because you're like, well, at least I have a higher body count, right?
Right.
And but then like if for females, right? If your husband says a number, you divide it by 3. It's the rule of 3. So if I were to say, oh, well, I've been with 21 chicks, you would divide it by 3. It would be, it would be 7.
Sure. Right.
So which would be accurate. And so anyways, for a woman though, if she's like, oh no, I've been with 7 guys or whatever, you're like, okay, well it's 21. So whatever number I was gonna give is 21. It's still like equal to or greater than, right? That's the rule of 3. So that's why I'm glad I don't know any of my. She had actually moved away from her hometown, so like I don't know. I mean, like I know the number that she told me, and I'm whatever. I'm whatever with the number that she gave me. But that's the thing that you guys need to acknowledge is that like the rule of 3. So if you tell, it's for you single guys, whatever number it is whatever your body count number is,
right,
multiply it by 3 before you give that number. All right. So if it's like 7, tell her 21, and you'll be back at whatever number you're at. But if you tell her 7, she's gonna be like, okay, maybe it's 2, right?
Right. He's
like
never
max.
Really met anybody.
Right.
He's never left the house.
He's what is he, 12? He's only got 2 partners, right? So understand that before you give your quote unquote body.
Unless you are 12, then I mean.
If you're 12, then yeah, obviously you would want to say 0, maybe 1, right? Because it's going to be one or the other. So if you tell your partner 3, she's going to automatically assume maybe 1 or 0, right? So you want to like up that number, but also understand when she tells you I've only been with one guy, it's really like 7,
right?
Maybe more, right?
10.
Maybe she rounds down, right?
Right?
I don't know, but know that the rule of 3. All right, Jerry, do you have anything you got to say to these fine folks, these fine 7 viewers who have stuck it out through the end?
Yeah, thank you very much for hanging out, and I look forward to a full episode of some actual paranormal next week, seeing if I can, switch gears a little bit. I always work on the whoopsies, but now I gotta, as we go through this, it's like, oh, all right, that's conversational humor, Tom. It's conversational.
You were doing that for a while, Jerry. I'll be honest.
Listen.
That for a few episodes before we switched to the.
Look. You know what, Tom? Just because I've used both hands in my life doesn't mean that once you know what I mean. So,
which one do you prefer? Are you a right-hander? I know you're right-handed.
Well, actually, so. I am. I write with my right hand, but I do it as a left-handed person.
You reach behind your back and around, and
no, dude, I'm absolutely serious. I grab it like as if I'm left-handed, and I do the curve, and I write like that.
Like a child. You write like a child.
Yes. Yeah. It was never corrected. But I am ambidextrous in the sense that I do everything else with my left hand, more or less.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
So
I bat right-handed.
Off with your left hand?
Well, like I said, I use both. Well, there are 2 hands, Tom, and
do you jerk off with both hands?
I need to. Let's be honest.
If one gets tired, it takes you a long time to jerk off.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that you have a big ass dick. It's
just like tiring. It's very tiring. You
have you need to get better spank material, right? See, if you would just jerk off thinking about your wife, Jerry, you would only need one hand, right?
I wouldn't even need my hand.
Yeah, that's it.
You know.
See, that's the right answer. Whereas like me, I'm like, oh. I need somebody else's hand in addition to. No, I'm just kidding. My wife's a
Oh, hey, come on. Who doesn't need a helping hand? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I also want to
need
thank
somebody
Rufus.
else to jerk me off when I fantasize about my wife. What a fucked up
Preferably
thing to
my
say,
wife.
Jerry.
All right.
My wife.
So, Tom, do you have anything?
I don't. You know, I don't ever have shit to say.
Oh, just I wanted to be the one to ask you sometime. Because you always have that. You're in control at the end, and I thought, oh, let me flip the script. I'm gonna ask him.
I normally click the end screen with Joe Biden approves this message or whatever.
That's right.
I will say this: if you haven't already, go out and buy an assault rifle, whatever the fuck that is. Go buy yourself an assault weapon.
Oh yeah,
because
they're gonna fake the election and do it again. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe Biden's trying to take your rifles. So until next week.
I'm Joe Biden,
Touch your butt.
and I approve this message.